the meeting from Tuesday's session. This is a meeting of the House of Commons Standing Committee on Procedure and House Affairs, as you're all aware, and this meeting was suspended on February 23rd. This is the 25th meeting, and like I said, and it's February 25th at 11 a.m. Today's meeting is taking place in hybrid format pursuant to the House Order of January 25th, 2021, and therefore members are attending in person in the room and remotely using the Zoom application. The proceedings will be made available via the House of Commons website, and so you are aware, the webcast will always show the person speaking rather than the entirety of the committee. I'd like to take this opportunity to remind all participants to this meeting that screenshots and taking photos of your screen are not permitted. Given the ongoing pandemic situation and consistent with health recommendations, all those attending the meeting in person, and I didn't have a chance because I logged on late. I don't think we have anyone attending currently in person, but we never know when we have substitutes. That did happen last time. Those that are in the room, just want to remind everyone and those that are getting subs into the meeting that if they're in the room, they have to maintain a 2-meter physical distance, wear a non-medical mask when circulating in the room, and it's also highly recommended that they wear one at all times, even when they're seated. And also they must maintain proper hand hygiene by using the provided hand sanitizer at the room entrance. As the chair, I'll be enforcing these measures for the duration of the meeting and thank members in advance for your cooperation. For those participating virtually, which right now is everyone, I'd like to outline a few rules to follow. Members and witnesses may speak in the official language of their choice. Interpretation services are available for this meeting. You have the choice at the bottom of your screen of either Floor, English, or French. With the latest Zoom version, you may now speak in the language of your choice without the need to select the corresponding language channel. You will also notice that the platform's raised hand feature is now in a more easily accessed location on the main toolbar should you wish to speak or to alert the chair. For members participating in person, proceed as you usually would when the whole committee is meeting in person in the committee room. Before speaking, please wait until I recognize you by name. If you are on the video conference, please click on your microphone icon to unmute yourself. For those in the room, your microphone will be controlled by the Proceedings and Verification Officer. A reminder that all comments by members and witnesses should be addressed through the chair. And when you are not speaking, your mic should be on mute. With regard to a speaking list, the committee clerk and I will do our best to maintain a consolidated orders of speaking for all members, whether they are participating virtually or in person. Okay. Another interesting thing I just wanted to, before we resume our business, just want to mention that there are, if we are to settle the first item of our business today, which is Ms. Vecchio's motion, there are 3 motions by Monsieur Terrien that have been put on notice, and there is a second motion by Mr. Blakey that has been put on notice on Tuesday. This is in addition to the study motion that he has put forward. So if you guys want to take a look at those. But where we left off last time was we had a speaking list. And on that speaking list was Madame Petitpas-Taylor. Just checking, is someone subbing in for Ms. Petitpas-Taylor today? She's not. Just want to confirm. Okay, Mr. Long is subbing in for her, but I believe then we'll go to the next person on the list since Ms. Petitpas-Taylor is not here. And correct me if I'm wrong, Chair, it was Ms. Vecchio that was next after Ms. Petitpas-Taylor?
Madam Chair, the member after Madame Petitpas-Taylor was Mr. Lauzon, and Mr. Lauzon isn't here either, and then it's Ms. Vecchio.
Okay. Perfect. Then Ms. Vecchio, it is you are next on the list.
Thank you very much, and I won't take too much time today. I think we all know what we're looking for is this motion was put forward just to do a re-invitation to the Prime Minister specifically, and there was a list of other people that were on that motion as well. The subcommittee had taken this to the committee where we had all agreed unanimously to have these invitations sent out. We have yet heard from the Prime Minister's office, and perhaps since this floor is open now, without losing my opportunity, perhaps the clerk can provide to me a detail on the invitations that have been sent out and the feedback to date, if you don't mind.
Yes, Ms. Vecchio. Invitations were sent to the Prime Minister, and we are still waiting for a response one way or the other from the Prime Minister. Invitation was sent to the Prime Minister's Chief of Staff, Ms. Katie Telford. We're waiting for a response about her invitation as well. Invitation was sent to Minister Freeland, and we are still currently waiting for a response for Minister Freeland. Same goes for Minister Chager. An invitation was made, but we are still waiting for a response from Minister Chager. An invitation was made to Mark and Craig Kielberger, and dates that were offered did not work for them. Alternative dates were provided to them, and I am still waiting to hear back if those would be acceptable. Farah and Martin Perlmutter from Speaker's Spotlight, an invitation was made to them. They have declined the committee's invitation. An invitation was made to Bill Morneau, and Mr. Morneau got back to me and declined the invitation as well. An invitation was also made to Pablo Rodriguez, and Pablo Rodriguez did appear before the committee last week on February 16th. An invitation was made to Ian Shugart, the Clerk of the Privy Council, as well as Ian McCowan, the Deputy Secretary to Cabinet, and they were not available, but senior officials from the Privy Council office appeared last week on February the 16th. And so that's the state of play as of this morning.
And Mr. Clerk, maybe you can share me some information. So with this, we've sent the invitations. What was the date of the invitations that we sent to the Prime Minister's office and Katie Telford specifically?
I'd have to check back on the specific date which I sent them. They were sent out the day immediately following this committee adopting the steering committee report to invite all of those additional witnesses.
So it's been almost, I think it's been 3 to 4 weeks then. And what is the normal turnaround time to get invitations? How quickly do we usually hear back from these witnesses to respond?
There's, in all honesty, there's no real timeline. It varies tremendously from one witness to another. Sometimes you hear back from them the day you send the invitation out. Other times it might take several days or even longer.
Excellent. I just wanted to get some of that for clarification, just as we're discussing this today. Before I know that there'll be a lot of rhetoric that comes out and sharing different things, and that's why I just wanted to get some of these things on the record, just to indicate that invitations have already been sent out by a decision by the
point of order, Madam Chairperson.
Yes.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chairperson. And because I'm anticipating, and my apologies, Ms. Pacheco, for interrupting what you were saying, but I just wanted to get some clarity at the beginning because I think it's really important as I'm anticipating that this could be debated for a little while yet. I'm not too sure in terms of the process. Am I to take it, Madam Chair, that it is appropriate that if a member is actually speaking, that they can actually pose question of the staff that support the committee to have that interjection in order to assist them in their discussions during what might be considered as their debate time. I had always thought that when you had the floor, you used the floor, and you're not able to pose a question to get the question answered. The only interruption is, in fact, if it's a point of order. Now, I much prefer what I just witnessed, and I think that's a responsible way of doing it. I know myself, I too have some questions that I would like to be able to ask when it does come my turn to be able to speak. So I think that I raise it now only because the Conservative member has illustrated what I think Liberal members, in fact, all members of the committee and those MPs that want to be able to participate going forward would have the same right to do exactly what it is that's been done here. I'm just want to make clear that that is in fact the proper process.
Thank you, Mr. Lamoureux. I didn't understand quite at the beginning, but I think it is, I'm understanding that you're asking as to whether once a member speaks, they cede the floor then the clerk answers, then somebody else would have the floor. But right now what you're seeing is there's an interjection and then the floor goes back to Ms. Vecchio in this instance. So that is actually interesting. Like informally, we've kind of done that, but in terms of formal debate, maybe I will let the clerk help with that. Maybe there's...
Madam Chair, you're on mute. I just thought I'd let you know.
Have I been on mute the whole time?
No, back and forth.
Oh, okay. Okay, well, let's have the clerk clarify then, because I think there's maybe some discretion in there for that, but I just want to have a clear, I feel like we've been doing it this way, but maybe it is good to have a clear understanding.
Madam Chair, I'm not sure if there's any specific procedural advice I can provide to you or to the rest of the committee on that point other than to say it does seem to be something that that this committee has done before, not just with me, but even when considering a draft report, seeking clarifications from the committee staff, whether it's myself or whether it's the analyst, on factual information that that the staff might have and that members or the full committee might be interested in hearing about.
Okay, that was my thought, and so then all members would continue to have that ability.
Wonderful. Thank you, Madam Chair.
And thank you very much to the Liberal member and the Deputy House Leader for being so kind with his words as well. So I think that's just some of the points of clarification on how this process and why this motion was put forward. This motion was clearly indicated that it was regarding documentation, it's regarding discussions, regarding prorogation. We're not asking for other things, we're asking discussions that would happen regarding prorogation. I recognize that many people they've gone back, they've talked about prorogations that have happened in the past. They've talked about the prorogations in 2004, 2008, and a variety of different things. And that, yes, that's great to put on the record. But I do want to put on the record as well that in 2017, there was a change. And this change was made because the Prime Minister had said he wanted to be open, transparent, and accountable to Canadians. In the standing orders, there was a change. There was a point where that if there was going to be prorogation, that a report would have to come to follow that would be tabled by the Crown. That has been done. Now, like any other report, I can even just think of what we've just done in the past with the elections report. When somebody has written a report or when a report has been tabled in their name, we have always had the opportunity to ask members on that report. We can just think of the election study that we just did. There was a report put in by the Chief Electoral Officer. We had questions about it. He was able to come to our committee and he was able to discuss that. That is what a report is for. It shouldn't just be a written report, slam dunk, it's done. There are many things in this. And I think if we're going to talk about open and accountable and transparent government, the way that in 2017 that this was modeled, why would he not be willing to come to committee and to discuss this report? I recognize that everybody's going to say, well, you're doing this, this, and this, but we're also setting a precedent here. And I want to bring in what Daniel Blakey has said. This is the first time, because this is the first time this committee has put forward a report. So we can talk about that no other Prime Minister has done this before, and that is correct. There has not been a precedent set for a Prime Minister to do this, but now there has been. So if we want to make sure that we are doing the right things for Canadians, not just for today, but in the future, to make sure that our Prime Ministers are accountable when they're prorogating, regardless of what political party we're talking about, this is a way, and we are setting the precedents for the future, not just for today. And I just want to leave that with the Liberal members. I think that's really, really important. I also know that there has been lots of indications that people don't want to have this reopened. And I know that yesterday, and I'm just going to put this on the record because I know yesterday one of the members got very excited on Twitter because there were multiple polls put out. There were multiple polls put out in both French and English, and the data has come in. If you need transparency, if you want to see what that data that we collected was, it was showing over 60% in favor of the Prime Minister coming. The only one that was shared, unfortunately, by the Liberal MPs of this committee was the English version on Twitter, but not looking at the official languages because we wanted to consider that and the different forms and templates that we're using this on. So all of that information has been compiled, not that it's an official poll by any means, but I think the thing is, let's just get to the bottom of this. And as I indicated, we are setting precedents. We are setting what we expect from all of our future leaders. And if this current leader is not willing to do this, then he has ruined it for the rest of the country, perhaps, if he's talking about transparent. So I just want to put that forward, and I look forward to any of the commentary that makes sense today, and hopefully we will be able to get through this so that we have the opportunity to speak or to have this come to a vote. So I'm going to ask Mr. Clerk now, can we take this? I'm looking for consensus so that we can go to a vote. Are we able to go to a vote now, Mr. Clerk? I would like to call the vote on this motion.
Maybe we had this happen in the last meeting as well. I don't think the clerk, you can call the vote in that way.
Madame la Présidente.
Madam Chair. Point of order, please. We can't hear the interpreter clearly. The sound isn't high enough. The volume isn't high enough. I'm very sorry to interrupt you, but I just want to make sure I can't hear the interpreter. The work is excellent, but I can't hear properly.
Madam Chair, we'll check on that to try to get the volume to be increased.
Yeah, your volume also, Mr. Clerk, was also very low just now. But he is checking on that. Does my volume sound good right now?
You're good.
Does the interpretation volume sound good? Who is listening in French right now? Monsieur Terrien? Yeah, okay.
C'est bien, là. Ça va mieux. Oui.
No, now it's better. Thank you very much, and I apologize. Thank you, Madam Chair. Point of order, please. Madam Chair, point of order. On the same point of order, unfortunately, the volume isn't the same between interpretation, yourself, and the clerk. Sometimes it's very high, very loud, and other times it's very faint. So whether it's coming from interpreters or the chair or the clerk or Ms. Vecchio, the sound is always different. So the volume is changing, and it should be equalized in some way.
Point of order. I was just going to indicate, especially, I hear what Mr. Arsenault is saying. I know that when it comes from Mr. Terrien, it gradually starts at very low and then it reaches up to the volume within about 5 to 6 seconds. But it means that we do miss the very, very beginning of that unless the translator is starting that few seconds behind.
It wasn't always that way, was it? I just noticed that in the last meeting.
Yeah.
Yeah,
it's more now.
I wonder if it's because I noticed it when somebody was switching in their speech from English to French, and they were doing it without a pause, and they just continued to speak, and you had that gap because the volume just changed all of a sudden. It was very low, and so I feel like we need to tell our witnesses and the speakers.
Vous avez raison, mais c'était pire.
You're right, but just earlier on it was worse. Now the sound is louder, and my colleague was also right about the fact that there's a difference in volume, but I think it's okay now.
Technicians in the back have fine-tuned the volume a bit, so they'll continuously try to adjust it if we continue to have the problem.
Your volume is not very good to me, Mr. Clerk.
Oh, is that right? So I'm having a problem now. So
no, it's getting better.
Okay, I was just saying the technicians are fine-tuning the volume, adjusting it as we go. So if there are any other issues like that, please just let us know, and we'll try to continue to improve it.
I think I would also suggest, I know that we're being told with the new version of Zoom that you don't need to switch between your interpretation languages on your in your toolbox, but I would still suggest, and now let me know if this is not an appropriate suggestion, but I would suggest if a member is changing languages from French to English, that maybe they be mindful and try to take a 2-second or 1 second, a pause before they switch to the other language that they're speaking, because I think there is when the translators switch the channel, we don't hear the volume immediately at the level we should be hearing it at. So just be mindful of that if you're a very, very talented person and bilingual and like to switch back and forth between the languages, which I love to see. Just be mindful to leave a little bit of a few seconds of a gap there. It would help, I think, for those listening to the interpretation. But anyways, Ms. Vecchio had called for a vote. I need consensus to move to a vote and for the debate to finish on that motion for it to go to a vote. So you couldn't just call for a vote in that way. And I do have 1, 2, 3, 4, at least 4 that I can see right now, hands up. Sorry, I had to scroll down. So I think 4 hands up at this point.
Well, Madam Speaker, I see this isn't going to go on. I see it's all Liberal members. So welcome to today's filibuster. Thank you very much.
Next, we have Mr. Long.
Madam Speaker, if I may, just before Mr. Long on a point of order.
Yes.
Yeah, Madam Chairperson, I just want to make sure that, in fact, I'm registered to be able to be on the speakers list. Ms. Pacheco and others have kind of inspired me to want to add some thoughts on the issue. If you can just provide me the assurances that I am on the list, I would very much appreciate it. And for an indication would be great.
Just point of order on that. How many members are able to be on the speaking list?
Yeah.
I don't think there's a limit to the speakers list.
Okay, no, but I'm just referring from each party. So is somebody else giving up his time? I'm just wondering on subs. Is this a sub or is this a person just sharing their time?
I see what you're saying. Let's see if the official paperwork has been received by the clerk. And if so, I believe Mr. Lamoureux is here as an official sub.
Madam Chair, I believe Mr. Lamoureux isn't here as an official sub. He's a member sitting in to the meeting, which members can do in a public meeting, which this is.
Okay, perfect.
And can members speak if they're just sitting in?
Generally, the practice has been to, if they do want to speak, to put them in the speaking list, and their turn comes up when their turn comes up.
Fantastic. That is what I've seen previously as well, but I just want to, I know that these types of procedural issues can become contentious in a meeting like this, and I wanted to be certain and clear. So, Mr. Lamoureux, you are on the speakers list. You are after Mr. Fragascatos. There you go.
Thank you,
Madam. I kind of want to reverse the R sometimes.
Point of order, Madam Chair. You had it right just at the end there. So if you just clip that and run with it, you'll be great.
I know. I just want to reverse the R and put the A in front sometimes, and that messes me up. But thank you for that. Thank you for your patience. Thank you for not getting irritated with me on that. Mr. Long, your turn.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and good afternoon to all of my colleagues. And just one thing on the interpretation, I want to jump in there. If you go to the interpretation button and click on mute or unmute original audio, sometimes that will help fix that problem of both voices coming through at the same time. Just want to add that. I'm not a computer technician, but that's what I was told last time. So again, thank you. I'm happy to sub in on PROC again. I feel like a regular now. I think I've attended probably 5 or 6 meetings in the last few weeks. I love coming in here, and I thank you, Chair, and certainly all the committee members for all the great work you're doing on behalf of Canadians. Thrilled today to see a real strong New Brunswick flavor to the committee. My 2 friends and colleagues, Serge Cormier and Rennie Arsenault from the north part of the province, are on the meeting too. And don't be envious of St. John, guys. It is +6 here today, and I know it's probably -20 in northern New Brunswick, but things will get warmer up there for you soon, I'm sure. So, Madam Chair, I mean, we're here obviously to talk about the motion. I've got some thoughts. I do want to read in, though, to the record, Madam Chair. I know there was some polls done, and I know MP Vecchio referenced some polls done. And, I'm looking at the Twitter polls, and there were, to her point, there was a French and English Twitter poll done. There was almost 6,000 votes between the two. And the numbers on the Twitter poll, 6,000 votes were, give or take, 60% said no, and 40% said yes. That's both Twitter polls, French and English. So I just want to make sure that was read in. And again, we're here for this motion. I'm here to speak on the motion. And just want to go back very, very briefly and talk about when I first came to Ottawa as a member of Parliament, and obviously that was 2015. I'm a two-term MP now. Don't feel like a veteran, but I guess I am. And I remember going to committee, excited to be on committee at that point. As some people will remember, I was on HUMA and ethics. And I was certainly excited to participate in the committees, to debate, ask questions of people that presented. And then I can remember the calling of ministers in, whether it was for, SUPs or what have you. And I won't name the minister or the MP on the Conservative side, but I can remember when the minister came in once.
Point of order, Madam Chair.
Yes.
For all those watching at home, and I'm sure there are millions of Canadians tuning in, it's short forms that we tend to use in committee. We all know as MPs what SUPs mean, but for the record, and again for the benefit of those watching, I wonder if our colleague could just put on the record the long form of SUPs.
Yeah, supplemental estimates, and it gives MPs
Thank you.
an opportunity to ask questions of the ministers or departments or what have you. And I can remember, obviously all parties, whether you're in opposition or government, third parties, what have you, want ministers to appear before committees to ask questions. And I can remember, again, being a rookie, sitting back, watching a minister literally being, to put it in words is hard. He was literally attacked and attacked again and again and again. And this minister couldn't even get the answers out. And questions were, so, and that's when it hit me. And I want to get back to this motion, but that's when it hit me. The opposition didn't want that minister there to ask that minister relevant questions or important questions on behalf of Canadians. No, contrary. They wanted the minister there for a snippet, for a clip, for a quote. And that's when I started to say, hold on here. I want to get back to this motion. And let's be straight up here. Our Prime Minister is in the House of Commons every Wednesday for question period. This is just one example. And we went through that yesterday. And to his credit, he takes questions for the whole question period. Now, to my knowledge, I don't want to say it's so much as unprecedented, but certainly to my limited political experience, I had not seen that before, where the Prime Minister of Canada comes and actually doesn't defer questions to ministers or other people, doesn't sidestep. He stands there and takes questions from everybody for 2 hours. So, again, back to the motion. And I know this is all about getting the Prime Minister to come into PROC to testify. But then I asked this question of the committee. If these questions need to be asked of the Prime Minister, why can't those questions be asked in question period? Now, again, as my certainly New Brunswick colleagues will know, I'm not a political machine here. I was elected to represent my riding. I was elected to fight for my riding. And, the actual political side of things, even though I'm a politician, I'm not, I would admit I'm not so strong as others are. But the Prime Minister is available each and every Wednesday to take questions. So if these questions need to be asked so badly, why can't they be asked in question period? Why can't the Conservative Party, last time I checked, they certainly have lots of opportunity to ask questions. So why can't the questions be asked there? In front of all Canadians? In front of all reporters? To be scrutinized? To be talked about on TV that night? To be in the papers the next day? He's available. He's there for opposition parties to ask questions of him. So I don't want to go too far down that hole, but it really struck me this morning when I was thinking about this meeting. It's like, I can remember previous prime ministers would duck question period. Wouldn't be available. You could count on your hand how many times they're available to take questions. Yet our prime minister is there. Excuse me. He's there week in and week out, every Wednesday, standing there, taking questions from opposition parties. It doesn't matter if you're the leader of the opposition, the leader of the next party, a backbencher. Doesn't matter. He answers the questions. So then I go back to, okay. He's available to ask questions or to answer questions. And he does. So what's the big deal about getting him here to answer questions when he's available to answer questions? So I just wanted to state that. And again, I certainly am the first to admit that, I've got some good support on the parliamentary side and the whys and hows and whats, but he's there to answer questions on Wednesdays, and I don't understand why those questions can't be asked. But look, the motion's there. I'm here to talk about the motion. I was certainly very appreciative of the opportunity I had last time to speak on the motion. And I know everyone, certainly on this committee, was waiting with bated breath with every word I said, and I certainly appreciated that. I could tell by looking at the Zoom screen that people were, anticipating what was coming next and certainly excited for what was to come. But time did run out last time. Time did run out, unfortunately. So I want to pick up where I left off last time, and I was talking about, the historical precedent. I know it's been certainly said earlier in the meeting that, conveniently, with the greatest respect, of course, but, that was then and this is now. Don't worry about the past. It doesn't matter what happened then. It doesn't matter what Prime Minister Harper did. It doesn't matter about the proroguing and the minority government and proroguing to save his government. It's about now. So, but it's important. It's important for the committee. It's important for me to talk about that because I think, with respect to the motion and keeping the motion in mind, it's important to talk about what happened in the past to educate, certainly ourselves, but to educate Canadians. To educate Canadians, Madam Chair, from coast to coast to coast, about prorogation, and what it means and how it's used and how it can be abused, but other times how it's not abused and how sometimes it's the proper thing to do. It's the right thing to do when you're dealt with a curveball. You're dealt with a generational pandemic that has not, moderately changed our lives, has impacted every one of our lives in a major, major way. I mean, little did I know when I came back in March 13th from Ottawa, how quickly things would change for us and and how our world would change and our country would change and how we need to govern would change and what we needed to do would change and how we needed to pivot and how we needed to come up with programs for Canadians, whether it's the wage subsidy, CEBA, CERB, recovery benefit, expanded EI, the list goes on and on, rent relief. I mean, we all know them off by heart. I can remember the end of March wondering if I could remember the name CERB and all that stuff. Well, I think all of us would go to bed at night quoting CERB and the programs that we have delivered. So things changed. And we did need to reboot, if you will, and restart and reload and refocus. And it was a proper thing to do. It was the right thing to do. And it was needed. But first and foremost, I do want to talk again about history. And I want to get back to the motion on that. And it's important for Canadians to have the proper context when they're watching us and making decisions on whether this is the right thing to do or the wrong thing to do, and whether PROC should be seized with this when so much is going on. So much is going on in our country. And you know, I did a quick tally this morning again, preparing for this. And last week, I'm very active on social media. I'm very active on Facebook. Last week, I did 4 posts. I did, on one site, I did 3 videos. The videos were seen by, give or take, 65,000 people, the 3 videos. There was over 1,000 comments, including my Ask Me Anythings, which I referenced last meeting. 1,000 comments about what we needed to do as government, what we needed to focus on, where we needed to go, how we needed to deliver for Canadians. 1,000 comments. Do you know how many comments talked about prorogation and PROC and asking the Prime Minister to appear before PROC for what I would classify as a theatrical event? Do you know how many out of 1,000? I see my good friend MP Turnbull put up the proper amount, and it was 0. None. Because Canadians want their members of Parliament, all of us, in all parties, Madam Chair. They want us to govern. They want us to have their backs. They do not want us spending time on things like this. If I walked out of my office door right now, and I'm in a mall for what it's worth, a couple MPs would know where my office is. If I walked out of the mall today and asked the first 100 people that walked by my door if they were aware of this, were concerned about this, knew about it, or cared about it, I'll tell you straight up, none of them would. Because Canadians are concerned about where they're getting their next paycheck, whether they're going to be employed. If they lose their jobs, are there benefits for them? That's what they're concerned about. Is there a business account loan that they can save their business? Is there rent relief? These are the things Canadians are seized with, Madam Chair. They're not seized with us sitting here talking about trying to get the Prime Minister to come in. I've sat on PROC a little bit, as you know. And hopefully people are happy about that. But I've also listened to witness after witness after witness after testimony. But yet, We're still searching. It's like we're an answer searching for a question. Like, it's like we're not getting what we want to hear, so we're going to continue. And we're going to continue to move on. And we're going to continue to try to get the Prime Minister coming. And we're going to try to continue to get a sound clip here and there. And just imploring on all of us that Canadians aren't seized with this, and the polls show it. Anyway, but look, I want to get back to the motion, and I want to get back to make sure Canadians have context. And it was in April through October in 2010. The same committee, it was seized with prorogation during the time of Harper's, when Prime Minister Harper was in. And we do know he used prorogation regular. He used it regular basis for many months. Regular thing. And, you know, I would say the most egregious use of prorogation.
Egregious.
Sorry about
At least I could say that one.
Egregious, not fradicados. Egregious use of prorogation was to save their government from a non-confidence vote. And he did it. And, you know, again, for the education of members who were not in the House at that time or unaware of what happened, in 2008, 2009, during the 40th Canadian Parliament, the Conservative government of the day created legitimate outrage on a national scale, for the prorogation of the House. I remember it. Wasn't even involved in politics. In fact, being an MP was the farthest thing from my mind. Real far from my mind. I was hockey. I was traveling the country. But I remember that. I remember watching it on TV, on CTV and CBC and all the channels. I remember about how they were like, he's ducking, he prorogued to avoid the non-confidence vote. And that's when I was like, oh, isn't that interesting? How was he allowed to do that? But it was triggered by the expressed intention of the opposition parties. We were going to work together. And the opposition parties held the majority of seats in the House. And we were going to defeat the Conservative minority government on a motion of non-confidence. And it was only 6 weeks after the federal election of October 14th, 2008. The intention to vote non-confidence arose from the government's fiscal update, tabled on November 27th, 2008. It included several contentious provisions that the opposition parties rejected. The Liberal Party and the New Democratic Party reached an accord to form a minority coalition government. Imagine. The Bloc Québécois agreed to provide support on confidence votes, thereby enabling the coalition a working majority in the Commons. On December 4th, 2008, then Governor General...
Madam Chair, point of order.
Yes, Mr. Turnbull?
I just wanted to raise an issue. It's come to my attention that someone member of this committee or someone that's involved in this committee has been putting screenshots on the internet. And I'm not sure whether that's allowed in the official rules, but I'm pretty sure there's... let me ask for your clarification on this. Is that appropriate behavior for parliamentarians? My understanding was that we weren't allowed to take any photos of these meetings.
Yes, and I did mention it at the onset at the beginning of the meeting that no members are to take screenshots or pictures of their screens of this committee proceeding.
Are we able to tell, Madam Chair, who it is? I mean, it's clearly not me. My hands are tied up with my speech. I mean, I would like to think that didn't actually happen, that there's not screenshots of this meeting on social media.
Mr. Turnbull?
Yep, there's a picture of Mr. Long speaking at the meeting that's been posted on the internet.
Well, Madam Chair,
Ooh.
this is a public meeting, and people who are watching on the internet can obviously take screenshots themselves. So rather than make a statement suspecting members of the committee breaking protocol, I think you should consider that there's a much wider opportunity for people to do it from the public meeting.
Madam Chair,
on the
if I
web.
could follow up. If I could follow up on my point of order,
There's
my
yes. Go
my
ahead, Mr.
understanding
Turnbull.
is it's on Ms. Vecchio's website, or social media, and I'm not sure who's taken it. I'm not accusing anyone of anything. It's just I've resisted the temptation to take pictures of many meetings for many months while we've been operating in a hybrid environment, and I just I think this is just inappropriate.
I will address this if I can, point of order.
Yes, Ms. Vecchio.
It's a public meeting. There has been absolutely nothing taken. I can tell you that my phone is over here and my iPad's over here that I've been doing emails on, but it is a live meeting. So therefore there is a live feed coming from this that is coming from Pearl View, I believe. So that's, so if you want, so there has been absolutely nothing breaking rules, but perhaps indication that you think someone did could be an apology. No one broke any rules here, sorry.
Hey, just give me a second. I'll get some clarification from the clerk on the side here on this. It is on your social media, but you're saying it's not yours?
It's a Pearl View live feed. It's a live feed that you can do from committees. It's available on Pearl View.
So you took a picture of your feed?
No, I have got no photos showing up. I have a live feed on my social media page today.
Oh.
So perhaps Ryan can go on there, get the information. Maybe
I don't know how that works. I'll look into it. But yeah, if you could just give me a moment.
I can tell you that it's the accusation is absolutely false. So there's been absolutely no photos.
I'll look into it and I'll just speak to the clerk on the side. Thank you.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Thank you.
Am I good to go?
No, if you could just suspend for a minute, just
okay,
while I'm getting advice, and then I'll let you know. Thank you.
Okay.
Go to my Facebook page. It's a live stream on Facebook.
Okay, I'm back. Sorry about that. We're back in session, and I just want to take this opportunity, I guess, to remind all the members in this meeting. You're right, Ms. Vecchio. I don't have a way to prove anything one way or another necessarily.
Perhaps there was an accusation. I could actually see the photo. I prefer that if someone's going to accuse this. Please just share with me what we've actually done, because it seems that there's absolutely no evidence of this, but instead has said that I've done something. So I would like that cleared, please.
Madam Chair, can I speak to
that? Sure, Mr. Turnbull.
I think I explicitly said I'm not making an accusation. All I know is that we've got a report that, and I have a photo of something that's been posted on Ms. Vecchio's Facebook page or live streamed. So I was just asking for clarification whether that's appropriate. It also, the commentary on it trivializes, I believe, the very, I think, important ability of members of Parliament to express their points of view. I know the members opposite believe in freedom of speech and protecting civil liberties. And in fact, my colleague, Mr. Long, is presenting his point of view in debate. So I just, I just wonder whether that's appropriate. So I was just asking for clarification. I'm not making an accusation. I'm just asking to clarify whether this is within the rules of the House.
Just on the same point of order, Madam Chair, if I may.
Yes, Mr. Blakey.
It might be helpful at this point if the the clerk could just confirm for us that there is a public-facing webcast of the committee proceedings that with a live stream that can be shared through social media. That it appears to me that that's what's happening on Ms. Vecchio's
Yeah,
Facebook. So if the committee is broadcasting in a live stream and that's shareable from the committee website, it doesn't seem to me that members would be doing anything inappropriate by sharing that public-facing aspect of the committee's own website. And to Mr. Turnbull's comments, I think we should really steer clear of having committees pronounce on the appropriateness of commentary by members on their own social media feeds about what's happening in committee. Like I don't think that's a useful road to go down. I mean, unless it's hate speech or something to that effect, members are free to have opinions. Members are free to express their points of view. Members are free to have opinions about the opinions of other members, and they're free to share those. And I don't think we want to get into a situation where a parliamentary committee is trying to regulate what can be on members' social media feeds. So I would encourage members to just stay away from that line of argument. They can go there if they want, of course, but I don't think it will be productive or really an appropriate use of this committee's time to try and pronounce on those things.
Yeah, for me, I wasn't really myself, at least looking into that. I was just looking into screenshots or photos taken of the meeting, which I have been explicit about. And I just want to remind all the committee members, that's fine. I don't have Ms. Vecchio's page. If it is a sharing of a feed, we can see if there is proper advice or if that's been looked into at this point. Okay, I see it's live there from that, but just a reminder, so that's fine. Just a reminder, though, to all the members once again, and their staff as well, because there is staff on this Zoom meeting as well. So just a reminder to members and their staff that there is no photos or screenshots of the committee, just like as if we were in the committee, we would not be taking pictures on our cell phone either. Mr. Clerk, did you want to speak to the sharing of a live feed? I don't know if there is any actual official advice on that. I don't know if that's ever been discussed.
What I'd limit my comments to, Madam Chair, is just that I believe, and I think one of the members, I just saw them, they held up their own iPad showing what, and it very much appears to be that it's the ParlView web feed from the meeting webcast that is being webcast on the ParlView website. All public meetings are webcast, and beyond, in terms of what people do with those webcasts, once it's out in the public, it's really up to them, I guess. So it does appear very much that it looks like it was the webcast from the ParlView website that at least Mr. Kent just held up. So I'm not sure if that's what Mr. Turnbull is referring to on Ms. Vecchio's website, but that would be sort of my comment on that. The issue when it comes to in-person meetings, the prohibition against taking photos or using another device to record a meeting, that is problematic. It's not problematic when the feed is coming from the Parliament itself or from the House of Commons Broadcasting Services, as the ParlView webcast of this meeting currently is. So I don't have any specific advice on whether there is a problem for someone linking to that webcast, but it appears that that what is at issue here is the webcast from the ParlView website itself, which is the official means to broadcast or webcast public committee meetings.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Clerk. And no, there's been a lot of clarifications. It's never a bad thing for us to be certain about the rules and all of that. And so I'm glad we've cleared that up. And where we were on Mr. Long. I'm sorry, Mr. Long, this went longer than I expected, and I hope you still know where you left off.
I do, Madam Chair.
Okay.
And look, I'm absolutely fine with the sharing of the feed. There's no issue there whatsoever. Yeah, it reminds me actually of the first time I actually ever did a live TV interview or a video was broadcast to me. It was way back in 2005 when we brought the St. John Sea Dogs to St. John, and I did my first interview, and I remember being so nervous and anticipation, and I walked the floor, and I was so nervous. And now, obviously, as politicians, it's commonplace to have our pictures taken and do videos and be on Facebook and so on and so forth. So, look, I mean, the wider it's spread, the more Canadians can, make up their own minds as to whether this is necessary, whether, calling a prime minister to a committee to testify when that prime minister already is at the House of Commons every Wednesday and can answer questions. He could answer questions, Madam Chair, from the Conservative Party for, again, I'm not an expert in parliamentary procedure, but I would dare say the Conservative Party would they have 20 questions every question period, give or take, and I mean, they could, every question they wanted could be with respect to this issue if they so wanted. So, look, I just want to get back to where I was. The break was nice, I will admit. Get a drink of water and coffee and kind of replenish a little bit. But it's time to get back to it. And again, I was talking about context. I think it's important in, bringing it back to the motion. It's important that Canadians can judge in context, and they need to know that history. So, in 2008, back when I was talking about the prorogation with Prime Minister Harper, Stephen Harper referred to the accord between the Liberals and NDP as undemocratic backroom dealing, stating that the opposition parties were overturning the results of an election a few weeks earlier in order to form a coalition that nobody voted for. The Liberals indicated that they intended to present their motion of non-confidence on December 8th. The government then canceled Opposition Day, originally to be held on December 1st to avert the threatened vote of non-confidence. This meant the earliest the coalition non-confidence motion could occur would be the following week, December 8th, 2008. The Conservative Party holds the record in modern times in prorogation of Parliament. Let's take a quick walk back in history and we see. And I'll list these off very quickly. During the 41st Parliament, the Harper government in October of 2013 shut down Parliament for 33 days to avoid questions on Senate expense scandal and the resulting PMO cover-up. Next, in the 40th Parliament, the Harper government shut down Parliament for 63 days to avoid the Afghan detainee issue. In 2008, as I mentioned earlier, the Harper Conservatives shut down Parliament to avoid a confidence vote that would have toppled the government. This shutdown lasted 53 days. In 2007, the Harper government shut down Parliament to declare mission accomplished and 5 priorities from election and took 32 days before bringing in a new speech from the throne. And after all that was done, how many times do you think Stephen Harper was before a committee to explain his reasons for prorogation? How many times? None. Not once. Not once did he appear. And I know somebody earlier talked about, the precedents that we're setting, this precedent for future. Well, I think the precedent, I would argue, Madam Chair, and argue strongly, that the precedent is already set. Prime Minister Harper didn't appear before a committee once with respect to prorogation. On August 19th, Pierre Poilievre, who was prior to his demotion, as I said last time, the Conservative finance critic, alongside Michael Barrett, publicly stated that prorogation was a cover-up to shut down the study in regard to We Charity. MP Poilievre falsely claimed that the documents provided by the government were redacted to assist in this supposed cover-up. This is, of course, ignoring the facts that the government House Leader's office distributed the documents to all parties, Madam Chair, which it turned out were only redacted in line with privacy legislation. But again, the Conservatives are never ones to let facts get in the way of their arguments, and this is the case here. Prorogation, of course, did not and cannot stop a committee from resuming a study that was underway prior to prorogation, or for that matter, starting a new study on any topic within the mandate of the committee. And that is evidenced by the fact that numerous committees did and still are hearing from witnesses on the We matter. So, the suggestion, Madam Chair, the suggestion that things were prorogued to avoid the We story, to get it passed, it's not true. It is absolutely not true. Because the committees could continue to hear witnesses. That's very clear. And I want Canadians watching today to know that. Again, I'm going to say it again. Prorogation cannot stop a committee from resuming a study that was underway prior to prorogation, or for that matter, starting a new study on any topic within the mandate of the committee. So the focus is, of course, much lessened due to the fact that after hearing from all the witnesses and seeing all the documents, after all of this, all of it, no proof exists that there was any political interference by political actors in regards to choosing of We Charity to administer the agreement. I know this fact is disturbing to the opposition, who seem to love using parliamentary time and resources on chasing their tails in an attempt to smear this government and score cheap political points. But the facts of this are clear. The prorogation was put in place to allow for a bit of a resetting of priorities in light of the resignation of the Minister of Finance, and likely, more importantly, to address issues in regard to the pandemic that members on this side believe is one of the most important issues facing both Parliament, the government, and the vast majority of the Canadian public. So, Madam Chair, let's be honest. Let's be honest, everybody on this screen and everybody watching me right now on Facebook Live or on Parleview, what have you. Let's be honest. If you had to list the top 10 things you were concerned about with respect to your life, the pandemic, the government of Canada, support programs, benefits, expanded EI, CERB, CEBA, the recovery benefit, rent relief, wage subsidy. Do any of us, does anybody on this committee, does anybody out there have the prorogation of Parliament in their top 10, their top 20? No, not. We all know that. All of us know that. All of us. Madam Chair, all of us could walk out of our offices or our houses today and do a quick poll, and we know the answers. We all know that. We know this is not in the sights of Canadians. Canadians want us to govern. Canadians want us to get on with the business of running this country. Madam Chair, we're faced with an unprecedented time. And Canadians want us to respond to their needs and have their backs. And that's why I'm particularly proud of our government. Madam Chair, we believe as a government, we believe as a Liberal government, that we are there to help Canadians. That government can do good things. That government can come forth with good programs. That government has Canadians' backs. And we've done that. We've absolutely had Canadians' backs. So, again, I appeal to the committee members, each and every one of you, that it's time to move on. It's time to get past this. Time to let it go. Let it go. It's time to focus on what Canadians want us to focus on. And it is not this. But I want to get back to the motion, Madam Chair. The motion before us now is to call yet further witnesses, more witnesses, to supposedly provide evidence in regards to this prorogation study. But let us be clear, the opposition has already made its own mind up. And we could hear from witnesses offering counter view for the next 6 months, and nothing's going to change. I've been lucky enough, fortunate enough to, sometimes I would recommend, Madam Chair, that all MPs get an opportunity to sit in different committees. I think it's healthy. I think it kind of broadens our perspective. And, I've certainly been fortunate when I started to be on HUMA. In 2015, I was on HUMA and ethics there for a while, and now I'm back on HUMA. It's important. It's important to know. But as I said at the very start, and my eyes were opened as a rookie MP, I guess, look, and I'll be very clear on this. I absolutely respect that the opposition has a role to play, a vital role in our government, or in our country and in government, to hold us to account. No question. No problem. Look, I think those of you who know me would agree that sometimes we do need to be held to account. I don't have any problem with that. None whatsoever. But this is more than that. This is more than that. This is, and we know where this will go. We know where this will go. And again, as a rookie MP in 2016, I saw the minister come. I was thrilled to see the minister. And then I was literally aghast. It was just like, boom. The minister tries to answer, boom. It was just a barrage. And then I'm like, okay, this isn't really about getting answers from the minister. No, it's not about that. It's not. It's about getting the clip. It's about getting it in the paper and getting the quote and the sound bite. That's what it's about. We don't need it. We don't need it, Madam Chair. We don't need it. Committee doesn't need it. Canadians don't want it. And we all know it. Each and every one of us knows it. The opposition has been talking a great deal about the idea that the Liberals are trying to force an election. Really? Really? We're trying to force an election? Take a look. Take a look. Take a look outside. Take a look across the country. We're trying to force an election? Ooh. It's not true. It's not true. We're seized with governing. We're seized with getting Canadians through this pandemic. And we will. We will get Canadians through this pandemic. Madam Chair, to continue on, Conservative member Nellie Shin in the House yesterday, well, not yesterday now, but back, again repeated the canard that the Liberals want a snap election in response to previous comments about why the opposition will not allow C-14 to come to a vote. Why is it, I ask, that the Conservative agenda seems to run in two streams? One, rather than make legitimate arguments against the government's agenda, or perhaps suggest their own alternatives, the Conservatives try to play gotcha politics in an attempt to besmirch not the legislation but the character of a member who is their target. Or two, spread complete mistruths both within and outside the House, usually to grab headlines from some of the more radical right-wing media and then to fundraise off it from supporters who likely do not understand that they are being told falsehoods. The motion. The motion before us now is, I believe, the former. The opposition thinks they can make great political display by bringing various cabinet ministers, staff, and the Prime Minister before us to give evidence on a case that the opposition jury has already passed judgment on. And they have passed judgment on it. They've passed judgment on it. I guess I'm probably not allowed, Madam Chair, to hold up props, and I wouldn't guess do that anyway. But if you do the polling, if you talk to your constituents, if you go out, well, I guess we can't go outside, but if you do the polling, I mean, the polls I'm looking here, the Twitter poll was 6,000 votes. 60% said no. Move on. Time to move on, everybody. Anyway, so here we are. Would also like to remind the committee members of the words of current Conservative MP Scott Reid, who was defending then Prime Minister Harper's prorogation to stop a non-confidence vote. And I quote, he said to a member of the opposition, "Yes, I do think both of these of those uses of prorogation were legitimate. And I want to point out to my honorable colleague that he thinks they were legitimate too. He may speak against them, but the fact that he and his party had the chance to demonstrate their lack of confidence in a government that would use prorogation in the manner it was used by voting non-confidence in the government and forcing an election at that time. His party did not do that. It is always an option at the end of any prorogation in a minority parliament. I'd like to point out that in a minority parliament, the government can always be defeated by combined opposition. We're a minority government, and we can be defeated. I mean, we know that. Now, I'm not saying it's only the Conservatives who have prejudged the prorogation study. The BQ member, Famana Kogan, said back in October, and I quote, "They forgot to mention that they were looking to kill time for 6 weeks so that people could stop talking about We Charity. Plus, they are still trying to stall the committees to cover up the scandal. Why can they not be honest and admit that they shut down Parliament because of We Charity?" And not because, we've got a generational pandemic, not because we need to reload, reset, do different things. No. So the reason is not the reason why we prorogued, but it fit in with the narrative put out by the Conservatives. And now, rather than get down to the business of writing the report, so that it may be presented in the House, the opposition wants to keep on beating this dead horse of a topic much the same way they did with the We Charity study. Now, not to get too far in the weeds on this, but if one takes a look at the House calendar, you will see that the House was supposed to end its sittings by the end of June and return on September 21st. But as we know, the House sat throughout the summer months until the middle of August. The House did, however, come back on the 23rd of September, so one could argue that this whole study is why the House lost 2 days of sitting in September. So what, if anything, would be gained by hearing from the witnesses named in this motion? I would argue nothing would be gained. All members of this committee, I believe, made up their own minds on this issue, and to take minister, staff, and prime minister away from their duties in the midst of a pandemic, just to allow the opposition to attempt, and I would say to make cheap political points. I understand, Madam Chair, I understand, again, the opposition's got a job to do. The opposition wants answers. But again, in this case, we know, we absolutely know the Canadians aren't interested in this. We all know it. We all know it. So, Madam Chair, I believe the committee should get down to getting the report written and move on to study something that is actually relevant to everyday Canadians. And, you know, Madam Chair, I mean, I've got the motion. I've got the motion here. Sorry, I shouldn't have put that up, but it was just the motion. I've got the motion before me here. And, you know, I just want to point out a few things in the motion that I think, you know, make it untenable, I guess, if you will. So I'm just going to quote here the motion, Part A. Renew the invitation issued to the Prime Minister to appear before the committee, provided that if he does not agree within 1 week of the adoption of this motion to appear for at least 3 hours, the chair shall be instructed to report to the House forthwith a recommendation that this committee be empowered to order his appearance from time to time. The Prime Minister of Canada. And I'll read B. Renew the invitations issued to the Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Finance and the Minister of Diversity and Inclusion and Youth to each appear separately before the committee, provided that in respect of each of them who does not agree within 1 week of the adoption of this motion to appear for at least 90 minutes each, an hour and a half each, the chair shall be instructed to report to the House forthwith a recommendation that this committee be empowered to order her appearance from time to time. And the last part I want to read, Madam Chair, is D. Renew the invitations issued to Farah Perlmutter and Martin Perlmutter to appear before the committee, provided that if they do not agree within 1 week of the adoption of this motion, to appear for at least 90 minutes, a summons due issue for their appearance before the committee at a date and time determined by the chair, but no later than 1 month following the adoption of this motion. And Chair, I just, you know, I just find it strange and to be frank, disturbing that this motion before us is asking to hear from Martin Perlmutter, the owner of Speaker Spotlight. For those of us who followed the Ethic Committee meetings on the We Charity issue, it is obvious that Mr. Perlmutter, I hope I'm saying that right, and his wife had nothing to hide, provided everything that they had faced, online attacks, due to the actions of the Conservative Party. And Madam Chair, as I said earlier, and I was speaking about MPs, going to different committees and learning and expanding their horizons. Well, I actually subbed in on ethics when, excuse me, if I can just get a drink of water. I sat on ethics when this was debated. So anyway, the Pearl Muters had nothing to hide. The Pearl Muters had to call the police. At a December 7th meeting, members of the Liberals and NDP apologized to Mr. Perlmutter, with the exception, of course, of the Conservatives. For the benefit of members who are not aware of what happened with Mr. Perlmutter, I'll give a brief, very brief, promise, outline. A small business that used to book speaking engagements for the Prime Minister and his family was caught in the partisan crossfire over the We Charity affair. Martin Perlmutter, who co-founded Speaker Spotlight 25 years ago with his wife, Farah, says his company has been harassed and its employees intimidated and threatened since August. That's when Conservative MPs began publicly calling on the company to disclose speaking fees earned over the past 12 years by the Prime Minister, his wife, mother, and brother, even though that would have contravened privacy laws. In one Facebook post, which is still online, Deputy Conservative leader Candice Bergman provided the company's toll-free number and urged people to call to press the point. Ever since, Perlmutter said at his appearance at the Ethics Committee, his company has faced harassment, personal threats, and a social media campaign he described as designed to discredit him and his wife and damage the reputation of their company, which was already struggling due to the COVID-19 pandemic. And I quote, Madam Chair, and I quote, he said, as a leader of a small company, I feel that my first obligation is to ensure the physical, emotional, and mental health, safety, and well-being of our employees. For the first time, and I'm quoting him, for the first time in my 25-year career, I was in a situation where I didn't feel that I could properly protect everyone from what was going on. We had to get the police involved. It was really a nasty situation. Perlmutter said one individual who responded to the Conservative call posted on Facebook his wife's photo and private cell phone number, along with a rant calling her disgusting and derogatory things. And so her phone started ringing day and night with all kinds of people calling. It was really unsettling. His voice was breaking. Perlmutter said his wife was in fear of her own personal safety for a while. Excuse me. She didn't want to leave the house. Some of their 27 employees, particularly young women on staff, were also concerned about their safety, he said. Perlmutter said he understands politics is tough. We all know that firsthand. Tough business. Certainly different than the hockey business. You know, one of the things I always joke about, Madam Chair, in hockey was that in hockey, everybody liked you. Didn't matter if you're conservative or liberal or NDP. Everybody had a common thing to rally around. That's one of the most beautiful things about sports, I find, is that it's unifying. You know, everybody can get together and we can all stand arm in arm and cheer for our favorite team. Well, as we all know, politics certainly isn't that way. So back to Speaker Spotlight. You know, 27 employees. There was young women and staff. They were concerned about safety. Perlmutter said he understands politics is tough. Apologize, I read that twice. But he said his company is not partisan and has been unfairly caught in the crossfire. He noted that the company had only a tangential connection to the WE affair and had nothing to do with the student services grant at the heart of the controversy. Madam Chair, if you don't mind, I just need a quick drink of water here. Thank you. And I'll quote him again. He said, "It's something I thought I'd never have to deal with. We're not a controversial type of business." Speaker Spotlight, they get thrust into this, and now, we see the damage that has been cast upon them. As part of its investigation into the affair, the Ethics Committee asked Speaker Spotlight to turn over documents related to any fees earned by Trudeau and his family members for speaking engagements over the past 12 years. As Parliament was prorogued, the clerk informed Perlmutter that he had no longer had to submit the documents requested by the committee. However, Conservative MP Michael Barrett sent the company a letter the following week, which he released to the media before Perlmutter said he had a chance to read it, asking it to do the right thing and turn over documents directly to members of the then disbanded committee. Perlmutter said the company's legal counsel informed him that releasing the documents in that manner, without an order from the committee, would violate privacy laws. He was upset that a member of Parliament would ask the company to break the law, he told committee. Bergen's Facebook post came shortly after Barrett publicly released the letter. By making the request public, Perlmutter said he definitely felt like we were being intimidated by Barrett. It was frankly quite shocking to me, to be completely honest, he said, adding that launching a lawsuit against Conservative MPs has certainly crossed his mind. Barrett participated in the committee hearing, but did not address the matter. He asked Perlmutter several questions about some specific speaking engagements. I'm extremely disappointed and shocked, but maybe not surprised, that Mr. Barrett was present here, in that he did not use his time to offer a complete apology for his actions, said MP Brenda Shanahan. She and other Liberal members of the committee apologized to Perlmutter for what occurred, as did NDP ethics critic Charlie Angus. The chair of the committee, MP David Sweet, and I was there at that point with MP Sweet, concluded the meeting by offering a sincere apology on behalf of the committee for any of the unintended consequences that came from any actions of the committee members in regards to the obligations of our office. Once the committee was reconstituted in September, it sent a narrow request to Speaker Spotlight for records of the speaking fees earned by Trudeau and his wife. The company complied with that request, and those records have been in the hands of the committee members for about a week. No one asked Perlmutter any questions Monday about those documents. So, Chair, I want to finish up. I want to talk to you and the committee and Canadians as direct and transparent and straight up as I can. All of us across every party, as members of Parliament, have been faced with an unprecedented situation, an unprecedented, historic, generational pandemic. And I know MPs around me whether it's, MP Arsenault or Conservative MP Rob Moore, all of us have had to deal with our constituents and offer support and be there. It's been trying times. And I know this. I know that Canadians are proud that they have a strong government. And yes, of course, we're a Liberal government. But I know Canadians across every stripe are just proud of their country. They're proud that there's a government that's there to have their backs. And as a Liberal government, we have delivered in spades. We have had Canadians' backs during this pandemic through CERB, CEBA, wage sub, rent relief. The programs go on and on. And we're tired. I think all of us are tired. We're physically tired. We're emotionally tired. We're mentally tired. And Canadians are the same. They're tired. We want to move on. We need to get back to a reasonable life, a normal life again. And we will. And we will. And I implore you, I implore the committee, I say, look, let's move on. Let's move on. Let's get down to the work, the great work that PROC can do. For me on HUMA, the great work that we can do. Let's get back to doing what we do well. Working together, collaborating, working across party lines. Doing things together to help Canadians, because that's what Canadians want to see. That's what Canadians want to see. And if we're still streaming this live, I know that's what you want to see. You want to see us working together to have your back, to support you. That's what you want. I'm absolutely convinced of it. So, Madam Chair, I thank you for allowing me to express my thoughts today, to give you my opinions. Again, I'm thrilled to have the opportunity to sit on PROC and speak and collaborate. I sincerely say, and I mean this, that I have a ton of respect for everybody on here that I know has the best interests of their constituents at heart most times. And it's time for us just to get back to work. And it's time for us to move on. And I thank you again, Madam Chair, for giving me the floor. Have a great afternoon.
Thank you. Well, you raised, sorry, just having some technical difficulties here. You raised some very interesting points. Thank you for that. Mr. Turnbull, you are next on the speaker's list.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair. It's great to have a turn, even though, I know my colleague, Mr. Long, mentioned that we're all tired, and I know Canadians are tired of this pandemic. But I got a very good sleep last night. I'm not sure how, but definitely looking forward to just expressing my thoughts and point of view on this motion, which I think is really getting us off track in terms of what Canadians want. I was hoping Mr. Peter Fragiskatos would stay on so I could pronounce his last name correctly and show off a little bit, but he's gone, unfortunately. I will say, though, as a rookie MP, and Mr. Long spoke to this, I think it's really disconcerting when we spend a long time debating motions like this. I took this job on willingly, gave up a business that I built for 12 years, and really believe that the role of an MP is to make a difference and be there for constituents and our communities. And I think I really think this motion veers us quite a ways off track. This is not where Canadians want to see us focusing our attention and our time, in my view. And I have quite a few thoughts about this, but before I sort of get into some of my arguments and my reasons, I'm a person that likes to provide evidence and reasons for all the things that I say, and feel pretty strongly about the principle of sufficient reason as something that really guides us in our work and should be at the core of democracy. Now, I'll say that, just to speak to a few opening remarks that Ms. Vecchio made at the beginning of the meeting, she said that this was going to set a precedent. And I thought that was an interesting phrase or comment to make. And I think she meant it slightly differently than I'm, interpreting it. But I think the real precedent-setting part of this conversation, and even the study that PROC has undertaken already, is that, Standing Order 32, Section 7 is actually, a change that was put in place by the Liberal government. And to me, it's a real step forward in the right direction. So I want to just take a moment to read that. So it says, and it was enacted, I guess, on June 20th, 2017. So the House of Commons adopted a motion to amend its standing orders. Among the changes made to the standing orders was the addition of 32.7, and it reads, not later than 20 sitting days after the beginning of the second or subsequent session of a parliament, a minister of the Crown shall lay upon the table a document outlining the reasons for the latest prorogation. This document shall be deemed referred to the Standing Committee on Procedure and House Affairs immediately after it is presented in the House. So my understanding is that no such obligation on Cabinet had ever existed before. And in fact, prorogation has been used throughout our history many, many times. Never before did was there any requirement to produce any rationale in writing and for it to be tabled. So this already is a significant step in the right direction that we have. I think it's about a 37-page report. Where did I put my copy of it? It's here. I can't remember exactly how many pages, but it's a pretty substantive report. Some of the reports we've produced on this committee are actually much longer, but I would say, to my mind, when I read it, it reflects a strong common sense rationale for why the Prime Minister chose to use his prerogative to call on the Governor General to prorogue. And I, in my mind, when I look at the rationale, it makes sense to me. And I think if we were to, it is actually, I believe, a public document. So is it not a public document? Actually, maybe I should not say that if it's not true, but I believe it is a public document, Madam Chair.
Yes.
Yeah, so Canadians actually really can, read that document and assess for themselves. But instead, I think we're here with our colleagues, honorable colleagues, I must say. I have a lot of respect, as I know Mr. Long, expressed. I have a deep respect for any and all members of Parliament, but I really feel like this is an attempt to raise something that's already been studied in other committees, almost ad infinitum, and was something that continued even after prorogation on multiple committees. There were thousands of pages of documents requested, which were handed over. There was ample time given to all members, all opposition parties, to question witnesses. And so this really seems like it's sort of redundant in a way. It's been done before several times. And unfortunately, the opposition parties are choosing to reinvigorate this type of debate and inquiry when I don't believe it's merited just based on the rationale and the clear steps forward that we've made in terms of increasing transparency around prorogation. Ms. Vecchio also mentioned a poll that she did, which I know someone else mentioned as well, that I think it was about 60% were actually against the Prime Minister appearing at committee. So it's kind of interesting that the results were not overly positive there, but that's okay. We know that majorities are hard to come by sometimes, and that's okay. Anyway, I would just say that
Point of order. Point of order?
Is it a point of debate or a point of order?
Well, I would just like for Ryan he's referring to something, so if he could indicate if he's referring to a partial poll or the entire poll, which one is he referring to? Just so that we actually have the information. Is he referring to all of the polling that was done or just the one that he took out specifically?
I'm sure he
So I'm seeing from Renee Arsenault just the one specific, so he did not take into consideration everything else. So if I can table that, that'd be great.
I'm sure Mr. Turnbull wouldn't mind elaborating on polls. It's up to him.
Sure, yeah. I've done quite a few polls. I actually did research kind of for a living, running a consulting company for many years. So I'm really well versed in polling and research methodology. And I understand, I think you had a poll on Twitter that I saw, which was great that you put that out there. I believe in sort of having that constant feedback from constituents. And that's a part of participatory democracy that I'm really fond of. But I would, just ask, you, Ms. Vecchio, for, did you ask about the other witnesses that were in your motion? What was the confidence interval? What was the sample size? Was there a sample bias in that poll? I would suggest that there was certainly a bias as to the fact that you didn't distribute it across the country. It does not, absolutely could not be said to necessarily reflect.
Point of order, Madam Chair.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So if Ryan is saying that this is not worthy, then why are we speaking about something if it wasn't done properly?
I think you brought it up into debate, Ms. Vecchio. I'm a little confused now. But anyhow, it was brought up today in the series of points that are made. It's up to, honestly, I don't know if I can really rule it out of order at this point. So carry on, Mr. Turnbull.
So I guess it wasn't necessarily tested or randomized or there was a bias in the sample. So even if you combined, I understand it, the multiple results that you may have got from social media, that the validity of those results could easily be called into question based on a very flawed research methodology. Is that correct, Ms. Vecchio?
Are we using the SIMS protocol here? Is that what is about to occur? I just want to recognize we do have Mr. Sims here amongst us as well, but that's really up to you, Mr. Turnbull, if that was a rhetorical question or if that is something
didn't know. I don't know what the SIMS protocol is. No disrespect to my colleague, Mr. Sims, who is, I understand, has a lot of experience, but I'm just a new MP, I don't know the SIMS protocol. Could you maybe clarify that?
Yes, absolutely. It came up yesterday when, I don't remember which member had chosen to interject on the SIMS protocol. I'm not sure if it was Mr. Nader or somebody else. Oh, no, it was Mr. Blakey. It was Mr. Blakey had interjected on using the SIMS protocol. And so we were thinking of you, Scott Skims, yesterday. And the clarification to that is that you wouldn't necessarily be ceding the floor to another member to make comments, but they would be able to make short interjectory remarks, and you would then continue to have your speaking spot. in that time, they would not be able to present, move motions or anything like that, but just be responding to perhaps carry the conversation in a direction that could come to some kind of compromise or move the conversation in a good direction. So really, it's a good faith tool to use to help in this type of debate when we're log jammed. But that is to the discretion of the member that has the floor, whether they would allow somebody to have that time to interject, speak, comment to their remarks, and then you would have the floor back.
Well, in honor of Mr. Sims, who's here, I think this is a great show of faith to have some informal discussion. And Ms. Vecchio, if you want to speak to the rigorous methodology of your polling, I would invite that for sure.
Absolutely. And Mr. Turnbull, Ryan, I really do appreciate this. So the one poll had gone out that was on Twitter. Because of the time frame that I was not aware that it was closing, we made sure that all polls closed at the same time. And I did not know that Twitter was closing a couple days earlier than the Facebook polls. We had put them both out at the same time and wanted to make sure that they were in both official languages, because that's also very important. And then what we did, as soon as the Twitter poll closed, we closed all other polling and then combined the results. So thank you very much. I can say, Ryan, I do not have the methodology that you have, but if we were referring to this, we could look at this polls. If we're looking at the Twitter polls, we could say that it's 60% for. If we're looking at the Facebook polls that actually had the same type of base but different demographics, we'd be looking at the exact opposite results of 61%, I believe, in favor. Actually, it was even higher than that, but we know that when we combined the things, therefore, I will say that I will be the first one to attest that the methodology of this is not great. But that being said, that we were a great opportunity of where the public was on this. And as you said, Ryan, you're using the statistics one way. I can use the statistics the exact opposite way. But regardless of what we're looking at, that we have had over 6,000 Canadians, if we combine the polls, 6,000 Canadians out of the over 12,000 people responding. Actually, it would be 7,000 people that wanted him to come. So I think we can interject either way. But yes, the methodology, not perfect. Next time, Ryan, I'll work on a poll on this. We asked specifically on the Prime Minister, and the reason that was, rather than putting all of the others, was because, to be honest, as all of the other witnesses have entailed, the best person to hear for on the reason for prorogation, coming from all of our academics and scholar witnesses, would be the Prime Minister, since it was provoked by him and then brought forward to the Governor General. He is the only person who has that right. And using the words of that, I recall, I believe it was you, Ryan, who asked, have we done a poll on this the other day? It was someone had asked about that. We hadn't done a poll. So thank you for giving me the ideas on how to do so. But next time, Ryan, I'll make sure I use your methodology. Thank you.
Yeah, I appreciate that clarification, Madam Chair, and Ms. Vecchio. I think it's great that you're making attempts to do that, and I definitely feel strongly and passionately about having an open government with lots and lots of participation from the public. What maybe one concern that I would still have with your methodology is just that we all know the Facebook following is definitely a biased sample, because those folks have chosen to follow you in particular. So they may be, more conservative minded. They may be slightly biased, or they may be really biased. Whereas, Twitter is sort of out there. It's a little more open, I would say, a little less corralled in terms of who specifically the demographic is that ends up seeing it. So, for me, combining those results and what you presented at the beginning, seemed to me to take something that was quite biased and combine it with something that was maybe less biased in terms of who saw it. So how much weight can we put into those results? I would say, from my perspective and, from a sort of a rigorous scientific research perspective, I would say probably not a lot. That would be my perspective. So would you agree with that? And I'm using the SIMS protocol now that I'm accustomed to it.
And Ryan,
point of order on the SIMS protocol, perhaps I could address that, Mr. Turnbull.
Oh, yeah. Okay, Mr. Nader.
I appreciate
was asking
this.
Ms. Vecchio a question, though.
I would just very briefly, if it's all right, I'll just take a few seconds.
Is that okay with you, Mr. Turnbull?
Sure.
Yeah, if we're talking about methodologies, and again, it's been a while since I've been actively involved in quantitative research, but I would suggest that if we want to take a poll that really reflects the views of this committee, we put this motion to vote right now. We take a poll right now of the members of this committee, and we can deal with this motion and move on to some of the motions from Mr. Blakey and Monsieur Terrien. So just a suggestion there.
Well, thank you for that. I appreciate that. But
Thank you for the suggestion.
Yeah, I mean, certainly that doesn't necessarily reflect the views of the general public, though, which I think was the point of Ms. Vecchio attempting to do a poll to engage members of the public in key decisions that are, being made by this committee. So I think it's a good point, but I'm sure we'll get to a vote eventually. I still have quite a few other arguments to make, though, and I'm quite prepared. As I said, I kind of got a good sleep last night. So I would just start by, saying that I want to make some remarks that relate to some key, I would say, important testimony that was made. We heard from quite a number of academics in our study so far. In particular, one that I don't know, kind of took a shining to. Her name was Dr. Lori Turnbull, and you'll notice we have the same last name, but it's not because she's a member of my clan that I refer to her. I just, really think that some of the points that she made really struck me as important. So I have a few things to say about that. So first, you'll remember that Dr. Lori Turnbull was in agreement that any time a government prorogues, there will be different perspectives on it with differing speculation about the motives. This is just, I think is pretty obvious point to make, but I think it's also an important reminder. So she stated, and I quote, "Just because there is a narrative that is political doesn't mean there's not one that can exist at the same time that is more about policy planning. These are not mutually exclusive," right? So I think it's important, the distinction here. It's between policy planning and the political narrative. And these are two different things. And I really want to go into depth about the policy planning process. And I think that really establishes, or really speaks to a narrative that I think is much more closely approximates the truth of why the government prorogued. And so despite the difference of opinion on motive and speculation about motive, our federal government was the first, as I mentioned, the first to ever table a rationale or a report to document its reasons for proroguing. And Dr. Turnbull also agreed that the report does indeed provide a rationale for proroguing. So, just think about this logically. We said we would provide a rationale, and we did, right? So in her words, she said that the narrative in the report is quite consistent with that of the fiscal update that we saw in November and the fiscal snapshot we saw in July. So there's that word consistency popping up again, and we heard that multiple times before when I asked witnesses about why there would be such consistency in this process. And to me, it's logical that, a government that's reevaluating its priorities doesn't, and because of a contextual shift as big and as massive as a global pandemic, wouldn't abandon its values and its agenda entirely. You wouldn't expect a new speech from the throne to be entirely different. It would have some consistency, and we heard that from several witnesses when I asked them that they said, okay, I guess that would make sense. So that's in addition to the fact that Ms. Turnbull doesn't believe the Prime Minister needs to have good reasons, but nevertheless, he did have a good reason, as we told Canadians over and over and over. Going back, however, the narrative given for prorogation is consistent with what occurred after prorogation. As you'll recall, we heard from Alan Sutherland from the Privy Council's office, who said we should have seen every, and I quote, every government department engaged with chipping in ideas as to the sorts of thematics or signature items that might help give life to the speech from the throne. And he went on, and this is Mr. Sutherland again, went on to say that would have kicked in late August, early September, and then you would have seen a lot of iteration between PMO and the Privy Council's office. So I want to, just add a little bit from my perspective in terms of my, just to actually substantiate this claim that was made, that there was an extensive consultation process done. And this goes to, the argument that really undermines, I think, the purpose of the motion before us, right? Because this is all related back to the motion. The motion assumes, a theory or a narrative that is good for the opposition parties to be stimulating and amplifying, because that message will have a negative effect on the position of the government and its ability to do its important work. And so I want to substantiate this claim that I think, it's substantiated by the extensive consultation work that went on during the time that Parliament was prorogued. So I'll give you just a few examples of this. So locally, my office, this is in my, and I'm not saying that this happened in every single riding across the country, because there were some differences in term, and we know this, that members, and I'm learning this as a new MP, that members of Parliament, Ms. Vecchio puts a poll. I didn't put a poll on my Twitter account or my Facebook account, but during prorogation, I was quite excited to reevaluate where we were at as a country. And in my riding, I touched in with many of my constituents. So we did an extensive survey in the riding. We collected ideas, got over 100 responses to a digital survey, and we did a mail out, a householder survey as well, which we got back quite a few responses from as well. We did consultations with our seniors council, consultations with our youth council, and nationally, we know that Minister Fortier had, and I can't remember the number that she said, but it was a very, very large number of consultations within our caucuses. And, I can't remember. I know I participated in at least 12 of those consultations. And these were really, designed to identify what was on the minds of Canadians, what they had been experiencing, how businesses were affected, how families were affected by the pandemic, and sort of where we should go from here at that time. And so I would say, those extensive consultations provide a meaningful example that substantiates why we prorogued. Well, we prorogued and this has been very consistent, and I believe that consistency is important for opposition members to realize, is that this story is consistent. There's no inconsistency here, and we've heard several witnesses call into question the timing of prorogation. Well, I would say to you that the timing makes perfect sense. Makes perfect sense because it basically happened within the first and second wave. And to me, it was a natural time to reflect on where we were at as a country and reassess what was most important to our constituents and communities and the country as a whole. I was going to give a couple more examples here. Let me just see. Oh, yeah. So we also hosted a town hall session on Facebook Live to get thoughts and ideas to go into the throne speech. We launched a microsite on our website and got submissions from constituents on that. We received over 100 paper submissions, and then we received over more than 400 submissions through the online microsite. So again, lots of engagement there, and that's just in my writing. I can't speak for Mr. Arsenault or Mr. Lazon or Mr. Blake or anybody else, but I'm sure we all reached out to our constituents at that time. I understand that also there was consultation that went on between the Prime Minister. The Prime Minister met with opposition leaders as well. I think there's some documentation of that. I don't have that in front of me, so I can't substantiate that. But I think some of the folks that may have participated in that may even be in the meeting today. If the Prime Minister, like we maintain, has prorogued Parliament to reassess, sort of reset the table, reset the agenda, then isn't this consistent with hosting all of these consultations? I think Mr. Blakey at one point in some of the other questioning of witnesses suggested in a way that that we were taking a break and that this was a time that we weren't working. I mean, it's preposterous to me to imply that MPs were not working during that time that we were prorogued. We know we only missed one day of House sitting time, but by no means were members of Parliament laying on beaches and sitting on their hands. And, I think people were participating in that extensive consultation process.
Madam Chair, in the spirit of the Sims protocol, if Mr. Turnbull would like, I'd be happy to clarify those remarks.
Mr. Turnbull?
Sure, please do, yeah.
I mean, I think it's important to note that what I was speaking to is the fact that Parliament, as a Parliament, wasn't working. We weren't doing legislative work. There weren't negotiations happening between the parties in respect of important legislation around the deadline of CERB. That's a fact, I can tell you, as the NDP critic who's responsible for CERB and participated through the spring of last year in many negotiations, that the government was not open to having those conversations, did not invite us to the table around those things. So it's not to say that individual MPs weren't doing the good work of MPs or that they were off at the beach or something, but it's a fact that Parliament was not meeting, and it's a fact that the government wasn't reaching out to other parties about that legislation, and it's a fact that frankly, that we were, in fact, the work I was doing as an MP was hearing from constituents who were concerned about what was going to happen at the end of CERB and why there wasn't legislation being put in place to tell them what they could expect in October with respect to their household budget. That's what was going on. And I do think it was a bloody shame that the government prorogued Parliament, despite calls by the NDP to come back in September to do that work, to give some certainty to Canadians. And I thought it was a shame the way the debate proceeded on a short timeline with only 3 days when we came back, when we all knew that deadline was coming. So that's what I'm talking about. Let my remarks not be misrepresented as somehow saying that I don't think MPs were doing their normal work. Parliament wasn't doing the business of the nation that it needed to do when millions of Canadian households' budgets were riding on the line. That's what I'm upset about. It's not whether MPs were doing their work in their constituency or not. I hope that provides the member some relief from the anxiety he was clearly experiencing about my remarks.
Mr. Turnbull.
Yeah, I would say thanks for the clarification. I'm not sure if it provides me relief. I think I would say the way I view it, and I know you are with me on participatory democracy and, with many of your thoughts on civic engagement and the importance of citizen juries and other things like this that I know you're interested, Mr. Blakey, in studying in the future, but taking the time to check in with Canadians between the first and second wave does not seem to me to be out of line or this sort of almost I don't know. I don't want to characterize it the way you do because I don't see it the way you do. I see it as a part of that legislative process. These two things are fundamentally related in a healthy democracy to me. So, we've seen opposition parties delay key supports and bills through the House of Commons for political purposes that relate specifically to COVID relief. And we're seeing that now. So, with concurrence motions, So, what I would say to you is that it goes both ways. I mean, if it was so important to get that work done, then, what about now? Why are opposition parties stalling things in the House and delaying our ability to get things done for Canadians? And then this motion is another attempt at that. So if you're so concerned about the efficiency with which we move forward, then you would be dropping this particular motion and moving on with the supports that matter to Canadians right now. Having the PM come before this committee and testify does not seem to me to be a great use of the time. So look, I want to get back to my remarks and my conversation.
As opposed to this,
Sorry.
for instance, being.
Go ahead, Mr. Turnbull.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. So when I checked in with my constituents, I heard things like universal basic income. I heard things about how the pandemic was deeply scarring their businesses, putting them into debt. I heard about the social inequality that people were experiencing. I heard a lot about social justice issues. Climate change was something that was still on people's minds, but really in the, not as an immediate concern, because I think we saw that this became less of a concern during the pandemic, but was still on people's minds as an important shift and transformation for our economy as we come out of the pandemic. And in between the first and second wave, there was quite a lot of stakeholders that were engaged in discussions and very excited, I would say, about the Build Back Better kind of messaging, and that some people have called that just a token phrase. One of our witnesses said that, but I would say to you, no, this is a meaningful message that encapsulates a vision that Canadians want to see, especially liberal-leaning or progressive-leaning ones in my riding. They certainly want to see us build back our economy and our society, differently and better, and create a more resilient Canada. Even the title of the throne speech reflects my constituents and what we heard during that consultation process. Again, consistency. There's consistency here. And so it just seems unjustified that we should continue with a study that repeats the past. And I would say is only for political gain. There's no other reason for it. So let me get back to my other remarks. I have reflections too. I actually wrote a blog on my website, which is reflections on the throne speech 2020. And the reason I wrote that was I was actually so excited that I felt like, as a new member of Parliament, that my voice was heard and that my other caucus members' voices were heard, and that the throne speech reflected those comments and that input that was given, the feedback that was received from me by Canadians, by my constituents. So things like and some people have said that, there's nothing new in the throne speech. This is absolute nonsense. I'm sorry, but I don't know how anyone can hold that as a credible statement that they actually believe in based on reality. There are so many things in the throne speech that are new and unique, and I would say, yes, there's still consistency there, but it does reflect what we heard. And there was an attempt, a real genuine effort, authentic engagement that went into reformulating and reassessing our agenda and priorities. And to me, that's why we prorogue. This is all consistent with the rationale given in the 37-page or 40-page report that has been tabled. So, and one thing that really strikes me as important, and I know Mr. Lauzon will feel just as passionate about this as I do, and that is that the national standards for long-term care, and that being a priority for our government, which was reflected in this speech from the throne, came out of that process. My mother's in long-term care, Mr. Blakey, and I'm concerned for her health every day. I've had a major outbreak in my riding at Sunnycrest in Whitby, and I'm telling you, it breaks my heart to see what seniors have gone through and the failures in our system around long-term care. And I actually feel like I'm choking up over this because this is really how I feel about this, that those voices in that consultation process led to our government responding in the speech from the throne. That wouldn't have happened if we didn't take the time to reflect. So the opposition members keep saying that, oh, this was all just a ploy to avoid something. Well, what about the important work that was actually done? You're not taking that into account at all. You're disregarding the work of a healthy democracy under this government. And I strongly believe that with all my conviction. I really do passionately believe that that's the truth. You want the truth, right? That's what you keep saying. You keep saying you want to drag everybody out and you want the truth. And I'm telling you my version of the truth. That's my job, as I understand it as a member of parliament, is to represent my constituents and do that to the best of my ability. I don't think my constituents are watching right now, to be honest. I think what they care about are that we get pan-Canadian or national standards for long-term care and we improve the quality of care that our seniors deserve. Why aren't we doing that? Let's work on that. Let's talk about that. I know that isn't the business of this committee, but those are the types of things that Canadians care about. You know, in a minority government, we know there could be an election at any time. We could be doing a pre-study on the bill that deals with Elections Canada and the elections process, and we've done a lot of great, meaningful work on that already. But we need expedient passage of that bill just in case at any point there could be an election called. And I really worry, what would happen to our democratic process if we don't have speedy passage of that bill. So, and this committee could be doing that work right now. There's other things that this committee could be doing with our time, but instead we're debating this motion, which I feel strongly, as you can tell, strongly against. I want to get back to my original remarks because I didn't quite finish. I got a little taken up there in the emotion around the issue with national standards for long-term care, which I hope no one would fault me for. Where was I? We managed to accomplish all of that, and by that I refer to all of the work that went into the throne speech, updating the government's priorities to fit into a wider global pandemic context while supporting Canadians, while engaging in wide-scale public service consultations. In Mr. Sutherland's own words, the witness that came before the committee, there was one day between September 22nd and 23rd in pure house time. That's one day that was lost. One day. One day. I would view that as an accomplishment for the government and a point for all House members to be proud of. The government accomplished all of its planning objectives without having to take away significant time from the House. Only one day for a task that Mr. Sutherland told us was a lot of hard work, and I would attest to that. I would attest to that hard work that I put in to that process. The opposition tries to make a fuss out of the prorogation when, and I'm quoting Mr. Sutherland here, from a convention perspective, there is nothing at all. And that's what Mr. Sutherland said at our committee. One other thing that I've had on my mind and that I think came out of that consultation process that I was talking so passionately about is, and I would point to, an article in the Toronto Star, September 18th, 2020, I believe it was, that it was actually published, where it talks about Minister Chrystia Freeland talking to former finance ministers about the economic crisis. And, it goes into some detail. It doesn't provide a lot of detail, but what's interesting is, and I heard this in my writing, that many women have been set back and deeply affected by this pandemic. And, it's been referred to as a she session. Well, this speaks to the consultation work and the hard work that was put in during this time. The Minister of Finance now checked in with one of the former ministers of finance, John Manley, and she also took the time to check in with another Liberal MP who served as the Minister of Finance for several years, and that was Ralph Goodale, someone who, both of whom I have a lot of respect for. Ralph Goodale is quoted in this article as saying she is referring to Minister Freeland, she is very consultative, he said. We've had some opportunities to have some really good conversations. I also note that in that article it's reported, and again, this provides evidence. Again, I'm substantiating the things that I'm saying. Because I believe that evidence in science is important. And so in the article, it says, especially in the case of women, child care initiatives have clearly been effective, he said, and that is fair in terms of gender equality and gender fairness. And finally, Goodale said, it adds to economic growth and not debt. Women joining, this is a quote, women joining the workforce has been the single biggest contributor to productivity in Canada since the Second World War, he said. Another quote, because of COVID, we've lost a chunk of that, and women have been put in a disadvantaged position. This is important to me. I spoke with Minister Freeland about this myself as the chair of the 905 caucus, and I heard a lot of feedback from that caucus about the importance of women's full participation in the economy. And this, to me, is another aspect of the speech from the throne, which is a major section in here, and we've seen it follow from this in the fall economic statement. And I'm not saying our government wasn't committed before this to achieving gender equality and advancing women's rights in every aspect, and that hard work we've been undertaking for quite some time. But again, this speaks to that consistency in the rationale provided for prorogation, which is that there was time needed to reset our agenda, and that work was done. Now look at the throne speech. Have people read the throne speech? I know you all heard it probably and watched it, but the throne speech has a section called Women in the Economy. And the first part of it focuses
Can I do a Sims intervention here, if you don't mind? A Sims intervention on this?
Well, I don't want to revoke I don't think it's how does the Sims intervention work? Like, do I have to agree to it every time?
You have to
so
agree.
It's not, so members can't just jump in and interrupt.
No.
Okay.
No.
So I would prefer continuing on this one, if you don't mind, Ms. Vecchio. I was on a roll there. So one thing I could say is that in the throne speech, there's a section on women in the economy. It says, many women have bravely served on the front lines of this crisis in our communities, or by shouldering the burden of unpaid care work at home. The next line goes further and talks about, we must not let the legacy of the pandemic be one of rolling back the clock on women's participation in the workforce, nor one of backtracking on the social and political gains women and allies have fought so hard to secure. So again, this, think about this. This appears in the throne speech. There was no such thing as a she session before the pandemic. It wasn't on, the minds. I mean, certainly we were committed to advancing women's rights and equality, but we weren't talking about a she session. We weren't talking about rolling back the clock on women's participation in the workforce.
Just a quick question, if you don't mind, Mr. Turnbull.
Okay, yeah, sure.
Am I to take from this the government wasn't aware of the research on the nature of how this was becoming a she session until during the prorogation? What it sounds to me is that that this consultation was necessary, and one of the things that the government learned was that the nature of the economic consequences of the pandemic were generating a she session during that consultation. Am I to gather from you that it was news to the government during prorogation that the pandemic was having a disproportionate influence on women?
I would say no. I think we're all aware that was becoming more and more of a clear issue, but did we understand how that stacked up in relation to other priorities and how deep that was right across the country, and just what that impact had on everyday Canadians in our ridings? I would say yes and no. I mean, did it give us a chance to check in with people and do a sort of pulse check? Yes, it did. Did it clarify specifically what that impact was and the true qualitative nature of how that was really impacting people's lives, women's lives in particular in this case? I would say yeah. So I think it deepened our understanding of something that we already had identified. But, I think that, and I would answer your question that it allowed us to reflect on how that, related to all of the other competing priorities before a government, and there's a lot, obviously, that, but, so that's how I would answer your question.
I just wanted to ask if I can, on the same vein, because
this is really unique that I noticed. Does this? I like the engaging debate, but is this normal that people don't normally jump in? I feel like I'm really stimulating people to jump in here. Is that? I don't know whether that. Are we encouraging that, or I guess it's up to me? Is it, Madam Chair? You're looking at me. I'm looking at you. I just wonder.
I know some people have allowed it since yesterday. So, I mean, if you can just say, I don't want any interventions, I want to carry on with my speech, that's fine. Like, there's no interventions, then you can carry on.
I was just going to ask because it's on the same thread as Daniel. So I was just asking if I could go on that same thread as the former Status of Women Chair.
Sure, I guess so, yeah.
Ryan, I hear exactly what you're saying on the She Session, because we had an excellent report that the Status of Women Committee had put together. We had emergency meetings in July, on July 7th and 8th. We came in for emergency meetings because I think the whole of government, all opposition parties working together knew that there was an issue. And we had an excellent report that was being put together. I know it was just going through final translation and was supposed to be tabled on the 19th or 20th as well. So Ryan, I know there's issues, and perhaps the government might be ever willing to look at that report that was never be able to be tabled, because we had some of the finest Canadians in there talking about this She Session. So I agree, but I can say that there was extraordinary work done by the Status of Women on emergency committees based on this. So unfortunately, we couldn't table it. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I know for the other committee that I'm on two other committees. One is the HUMA committee that Mr. Long, I don't know if he's still here. Yeah, Mr. Long serves on that committee with me as well. And we decided right after prorogation to essentially reconvene with one motion, which put all the studies that we had done before back on the table, and we continued forward on our work as if there was really no difference. I mean, we reassessed our priorities a little bit, but we continued with our work. So I wonder why the committee that you're speaking of didn't do that. Maybe you felt like the speech from the throne already dealt with.
They did. No, actually, they did go back into it. It's just that we had something that was because it was talking about the childcare issues. It was talking about a variety of different things. It would have just come, let's say, 3 to 4. It would have come about 5 months earlier. That's all. So that information was already there, and it would have been available to the government in July. And still waiting for the committees to reconvene. And FEWA was the last committee to reconvene due to the technical difficulties that we currently have. So they were late to reconvene, and I know that this is something they studied. I'm just saying that of the subject matter, all of the information was there in July for the government, and they did not have to wait for them to reconvene and get back on the study, where I don't know if I think it's been reported now, but those are some of the delays. It was a 5-month delay for the status of women, which means childcare, which means all of those other issues that you're talking about.
I'm glad you mentioned childcare, and I don't know, I can't really speak to the work of your committee. I'm not aware of the report, but it's good to hear that eventually it did move forward. I wonder, the commitment, I was actually going to mention this, so this sort of leads into a couple other points that I wanted to make before I wrap up, which was that, I get what page is this? Actually, that's funny. Oh, I guess it would be page 13 in the throne speech. The government will create an action plan for women in the economy to help more women get back into the workforce and to ensure a feminist intersectional response to this pandemic and recovery. Anyway, I could go on about that, but I think that's a really important commitment that we made, and there's obviously more work to be done. Also, it talks about the 50-year Royal Commission on the Status of Women outlined the necessity of childcare services for women's social and economic equality. And then it goes on to recognize the urgency of this challenge, and the government will make a significant long-term sustained investment to create a Canada-wide early learning and childcare system. To me, this is, the pandemic highlighted the She session. It highlighted how this could set women back, and the hard-fought advancement of women's equality could be set back by this pandemic. And the government is both committing to making an action plan for women in the economy, but also for a national early learning and childcare system. This is, I can't tell you how passionately some of my constituents feel about that as a priority. So again, I know we all have different opinions on things, and that's fine. And Ms. Vecchio did some, I'm sure, very substantive work in her committee that I personally would value reading and reviewing. And I try to read a lot. That's why my eyes are always so red. I stay up pretty late reading things. That's why I was remarking before that I got a good sleep for once, so I feel energized for today's debate. And it's important. I hope all members are taking care of themselves at this time. And I know I really value the hard work that you all put in every day, and I really respect all of you, and I hope you're all taking the time to take care of yourself. I'm going to wrap up there for now, Madam Chair, and I do have a lot more to say about this, but for now I'll hand it over to one of my honorable colleagues. I don't know who's next, but I'm sure they have lots of meaningful things to share as well, so thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Turnbull, for your remarks, and I apologize about the interventions. Just give me a heads up that you and somehow more were encouraged than usual or prompted somehow. But if a member doesn't wish to go down that road, they don't have to. We don't have to use the protocol at all, really, if committee doesn't find it helpful. It's only there to really be helpful, not to actually make it worse than what expect. Mr. Sims is making weird faces. I don't know what you think about that, but Mr.
Merci, Madame la Présidente. I would like to thank my colleague Ryan for his passion. We can't miss anything what you were saying. Merci beaucoup à tous.
Thank you, everyone. We are here to talk about proroguing Parliament and its relevance. My colleague referred to the throne speech, and I will also talk about the fall economic statement. We know that the speech from the throne was delivered in September, but there was also the fall economic statement in November, and work that was done during prorogation, which did make a difference. I'd like to come back on a very important aspect that my colleague Ryan referred to, and that directly affected me. It is in relation to the decisions that were made during this very difficult period that we are still experiencing right now in relation to the situation of seniors. Our colleague referred to long-term care facilities. And I'd like to say that those files are addressed in many committees, but the PROC committee, our committee, is in a very good position to talk about seniors. Proof of it is that in C19, there's aspects relating to long-term care that are very important and that are part of the mandate of the PROC committee. Those are discussions that involved the provinces, the territories. The government is fully aware of the specific needs of seniors and long-term care facilities during this pandemic. We know they constitute a particularly vulnerable population. It proposes specific measures for Canadians living in long-term care facilities by protecting their rights and by facilitating their participation in democratic processes. What seniors have experienced and are still experiencing in long-term care facilities is a very special situation. They have been isolated from their families. They have been suffering from isolation, but we need to take their needs into account should there be an election tomorrow, for example. Should the bill be passed into law, this would give Elections Canada and the Chief Electoral Officer the necessary leeway to make voting safe for electors living in long-term care facilities. So this directly affects us in terms of our mandate. So our committee is directly involved in the issue, and I think Ryan expressed things very clearly in that respect. But I wanted to talk about the positions taken by our government during the pandemic and during the prorogation. I had to say something about seniors because I'm the parliamentary secretary responsible for seniors. I'd like to apologize for missing the first hour of the meeting. If I repeat anything that was said before by colleagues, well, you have all my apologies because I was on duty in the House to promote the cause of seniors concerning a motion by the Bloc Québécois. What I'd like to add concerning seniors is that we are planning for 13 days for election staff to allow long-term care facility residents to vote in a safe and secure manner that will allow for public health guidelines to be respected. This needed to be addressed and discussed with many departments, not just the health department, but also Elections Canada. There's also the whole House of Commons administration. This 13-day period would allow long-term care facilities to get organized with elections authority to hold elections in a safe and secure manner for long-term care facility residents, and also to get the vote. It's also about getting the vote from seniors. This bill would allow election staff to install polling stations in some long-term care facilities on specific floors in specific locations to meet the needs of this vulnerable population. And we always have to keep in mind that we are just out of the second wave, but we have to be aware that there might be a third wave. We also have to keep in mind that there's zones that are more affected by coronavirus than others. We have like a pandemic seriousness grading level, and it's important to adjust to this, to establish measures that are provided for in the procedure to allow seniors in long-term care facilities to vote. I will have to take my computer along with me, unless you'll allow me to take my dog for a walk, because my dog is going to be yapping till I take him out for a pee or something. Madam Chair, would you give me 10 seconds to let my dog out, or I can bring my computer with me?
You only need 10 seconds, but I actually need 5 minutes. Is it okay if we suspend for 5 minutes? I have been thinking about that for, yes, okay, thank you. We'll all be back
OK,
at
une pause santé de 5 minutes.
So let's have a 5-minute health break, and then we'll come back. I'm swearing that I will be as passionate as I was.
carry on where we left off. The meeting is unsuspended. Mr. Luzon, please carry on.
I just to wish happy birthday to your husband, Karen. 50 years old. I get this a few years ago. Merci. Merci.
Thank you, everyone.
Okay, so I will switch in French now. I think it's more easier for me to speak in French. I can speak a little bit more longer in French and English. Okay, so
Bon.
Je donnais du pot.
So I was supporting Ryan earlier. I really liked what Ryan was saying about seniors. But he also spoke about the speech from the throne. And I would like to add to that the economic statement. The speech from the throne was in September and the economic statement in November. And I think this is very important because seniors were mentioned. Ryan said earlier that we heard testimony, and I read this testimony in the report, and some of that testimony referred to the speech from the throne. Some said that it didn't look like a government was sort of relaunching with that speech from the throne. However, I simply have to think about our Francophone communities, our farming community, our Acadian communities. I mean, René Arsenault comes from there. And the municipalities. I was part of the Canadian Federation of Municipalities, and I have a lot of respect for that organization. And they said to us that there was assistance that would help them promote French throughout Canada. And the speech from the throne was very encouraging on that matter, and that came from cultural organizations. So we have made progress since then, since the speech from the throne. For example, in my riding. In my riding, we care about agriculture, the environment. I come from a very rural riding, a very big riding. 5,000 square kilometers, 41 municipalities, rural municipalities. What did farmers say? Well, they were pleased that we were promoting in the speech from the throne the strengthening of the Official Languages Act, the strengthening of French throughout the country. So we changed things. We added things to the speech from the throne. We wanted to make sure that our culture was protected, French was protected in Quebec and outside Quebec, in Francophone and Acadian communities. So in the speech from the throne, we brought in changes that we can see today. Now, in metropolitan areas, well, the Chamber of Commerce of Montreal said that moving our economy forward with clean technology is important. And this was pointed out in the speech from the throne. They said that it was good news for electric transportation, for example. That's in Quebec. But this is happening throughout Canada. This is the Chamber of Commerce in Montreal that pointed this out. They're one of the biggest chambers of commerce in Canada. And they said it made a difference. The speech from the throne made a difference. The speech from the throne after prorogation. And we see evidence of that. The speech from the throne committed to dealing with the opioid crisis, well-being in Indigenous communities, mental and also improving mental health throughout communities when they need it. And this was welcomed by associations in Canada. There was also positive reaction to the commitments made in the speech from the throne to help dairy producers. That was announced in the speech from the throne. And what has been done since then? Well, my dairy producers and your dairy producers in your ridings received fair compensation that was accepted by all the dairy associations in Canada. And I could talk about many other benefits, but these are concrete actions that we took by stepping back. You're asking what a prorogation serves? Well, I've just given you a few examples of what purpose it serves. I haven't even spoken to you extensively about seniors. At 75 years old, for example, there will be a 10% increase in their benefits. Now, obviously, we're all working to tackle this pandemic and this crisis, and obviously some things will have to be delayed because of that. There are problems in all spheres, all sectors, all areas, whether it be the public, whether it be citizens, seniors, businesses. We're all facing problems. And this government now has put itself into a better position to tackle these issues. Our government has brought in programs that will help citizens. I've said this, and I'll say it again, nothing is perfect. Obviously, there was no guidebook at the beginning of this crisis. But as a government, and I've been in politics for a while, by the way. I've been in politics for about 25 years. I was a municipal councillor. I've been a federal MP since 2015. And I've never felt as useful to my constituents as I do now in meeting their needs and meeting people's needs regardless of who they are. I've spoken already about ferries, seniors, the general public, micro businesses of 2 or 3 employees. Do you know what we did, actually? We've saved lives. I would go as far as saying that. Today I'm going to speak from the heart. We have saved lives. There has been so much psychological distress throughout the population. You know, one of the biggest stresses during a divorce is financial. And here we had this pandemic that led to considerable family stress. We know that there were the calls coming from women, for example, increased several-fold. But what we decided to do was help as best we can all communities, and we want to be able to meet their needs. We're going to have to work extremely hard. We have been working extremely hard, and we've saved households. We've saved divorces. We've saved businesses. We've saved these people from these stressors by helping businesses, by helping the population at large. If you look at seniors who are in need throughout the pandemic, well, they were given $1,500, which is almost double what we had promised during the 2015 elections with the guaranteed income supplement. We're ready now to go forward with an increase for our seniors. We're ready to move on helping businesses, on helping the economic recovery. That's why we needed a recovery agenda. And there are many things that we have done on top of that speech from the throne. You can find some of that in the economic statement. Contrary to what I heard in some testimony, and contrary to what I read, we can't necessarily just turn on a dime and take 48 hours to reset. If a pandemic isn't a good reason to prorogue, I don't know what is, whether it be for this government, this country, or another country.
We ran into a wall that nobody expected. Nobody could have foreseen the pandemic. Some will say the government didn't react quickly enough. The government should have done this, should have done that. But would haves, could haves, I have heard those all my life. But in the case of the pandemic that we're still in, we have to show as government, in committees but everywhere, that we are working together, forging ahead, that we're working in a house to pass resolutions like MAID. People are waiting for that. My neighbor, my next door neighbor, when I came back from my jogging, he was sitting on my front step. He was waiting for me. He was in tears. I said, "What's wrong?" He said, "Do something for medically assisted dying. I need it." He had SLA, "I'm going to die soon." And as a sportsman, marathoner, I need you. You need to pass the law and widen the access. Otherwise, I won't be eligible. And now we're trying to work in the House, but we're being hampered. And while we're trying to answer to the court decision, we're working with provinces and territories. And now more than ever, it's important to work together to move ahead. And the motion that we're debating it has a lot of consequences for the government. And we have a lot of other things to talk about. I really believe that the report we got was sufficient to enable us to go ahead and formulate the best recommendations we can. And after everything I read over the past few days, there's one thing that stands out. And Ryan, me too, I went to bed late, but I slept very well. I read till late into the night, till the wee hours, in order to learn more about the file, about the issue. And what comes out of all my readings is that there's a lot of different opinions, and I respect these different opinions. What is a little harder for me is when opinions come with the conclusions before the committee has even been able to talk about recommendations. That bothers me a bit. But it's written, and we are responsible enough, educated enough to take decisions on what we want in a report, what we don't want. We'll go over it line by line. We'll put up to date all of the information that we have. But I really believe that we have to get to work as quickly as possible. We have to look at proposals that are really important for the democracy. And I sincerely believe that we have to go forward with other motions, other projects, so that we can continue our work in this committee. Now I'd like to come back. My colleague spoke a lot about the importance of the speech from the throne. But I would like to talk to you about the role of the speech from the throne and the economic update. Someone said that it wasn't necessary that it was just a smokescreen, but I already see the difference in the people, in the population. I know, Ms. Vecchio, you're happy to hear me quote what you said, what your party said, but in fact, I really believe that the speech from the throne was incredibly important, just like the economic update. And we all know that we're living through a hard winter. We're tired. We're tired of being in lockdown, but we're still free sometimes to change things. I isolate myself in my writing office, but I'm still alone. I'm alone at home with my dog, who barks sometimes to be let out. My children are gone. My wife is working, and I isolate myself, and I have to say that me too, I feel alone, but I have all of my capacities. I have you and a screen. I have the House. I'm parliamentary secretary. I'm passionate about about seniors. Imagine how many seniors are isolated and can't leave their room. What they have is a bed, a sink, a closet, and a TV. Some of them don't have internet. You have to know that in my writing, and I heard witnesses saying that elderly people can't afford internet. Well, in my reading, not only they can't afford it, but they don't. It's not accessible. That's why our government took position. No government has ever invested as much as we have to make internet accessible to everybody and affordable as soon as possible. Affordable 5G, 50 megabits, high speed, so that it will be accessible for the elderly, for the vulnerable people, to take them out of their isolation. I have internet, even though I'm in the country. I didn't know that there was going to be a pandemic, but as an MP, I needed internet. My kids needed to do their homework, but that's not the case for everyone in my writing. So our government's priorities is to take a step back and find out how we can offer internet to writing like mine. There's a highway that was built through my writing, and when I get on the highway, I follow the standards, the rules. I use I speak on the phone without holding it, but I get cut 4 times because there's no more service, and we're in 2020. What are our priorities? Our priorities are there or elsewhere, but they're all important. But I think for the people's safety and to break isolation, we have to have a good communication system. And that communication system is extremely important for our democracy and for the future that we want to build. Because the future that we want to build, of course, during the pandemic, we were isolated. Some groups were isolated, including senior Canadians, but not just them. I took Highway 323 in my writing, and I saw a car that was in trouble on top of the hill, and I stopped to see if I could help this person. And when I came close to the car, I went slowly because I didn't want to frighten this woman who was alone with her 3 kids. And I asked, "Can I help you?" And she said, "There's nothing you can do except provide me with the internet. And if I'm here It's because it's the only place where I have access to internet so that my kids can do their homework. Is it normal that a woman puts her kids in their car in 2020 to find a place on top of a hill so that her kids can do their homework? For me, that's a priority. That's a priority, but there is hope because better days are ahead. Because the government, as we said in the speech from the throne and the economic update, we have a plan to help Canadians, whether through connectivity for our elders, a long-term care, a national strategy on long-term care. Well, in that context, taking the floor and expressing myself on the importance of the speech from the throne and the economic update. That shows the importance of the government and the Governor General's prerogative of interrupting Parliament for a short time. We don't know exactly how this pandemic will play out. We don't know when it will end. In fact, we're already talking about variants and a possible third wave. And we don't know where we're headed, but we know it's going to end. We know that because we took measures that were really necessary, and the measures we took, well, they're decisions that our government took. And how did we take those decisions? Well, if the pandemic is not a sufficient reason to take a step back, to come back better, well, we'd have to abolish that rule because the prerogative of proroguing is essential in a situation like the one that we're in. No one can say that it wasn't useful. We can presume a lot of things in the 4 committees that analyzed the prorogation, but I can tell you that there is no one, excuse me, I don't want to speak for you, but no one can say today that this prorogation was not helpful. Our government was really clear in the economic update. Afterwards, we were able to say that every Canadian will be vaccinated freely. We have a plan. It's in place. We're working hard with the suppliers. We're working extremely hard with the hubs that we want to create in Canada to meet future vaccination needs. We need to build plants, but we can't do that overnight. We're negotiating with other suppliers. We have the most complete portfolio of vaccines, the most diversified in the world.
So we can all have access to vaccines, and even more than that, because to date, I can't remember exactly what the Prime Minister said, but we have 430 million doses of vaccine for each candidate, for all the people who are eligible to receive the vaccine. So we're in a very good position. In the full economic statements, there were a number of measures that would allow Canadians to fight the pandemic and its negative effects. Because we did not only address the vaccine issue, we did not only talk about long-term care facilities and support for dairy farmers, but those were significant aspects. The full economic statement mentioned investments in screening efforts, billions of dollars to acquire personal protective equipment for nurses, doctors, health workers, frontline workers. And that is not to mention rapid testing, PCR tests. We have PCR tests that are not even used in the province right now.
Order.
A point of order, sure.
Yeah, sorry, Mr. Lazon. I'm having trouble hearing. I don't know why the volume is quite low on Mr. Lazon's on the translation. It's not his. It's the translation. It's actually low. I'm not sure if it's just me or if others are having the same issue, but I just wanted to raise it. Maybe we could check if the interpreter volume could be turned up just a little bit so that I don't know if others were having the same problem, but maybe it's just me.
Madam Chair, we can check on that.
Okay. Thank you, Justin. Thank you. Sorry, it feels so helpless sometimes with these Zoom meetings. There's not something I can physically go and do, but while he's checking on it, you know what was very interesting? I feel like I'm interjecting. Well, I don't know if this is appropriate, but I thought it would be interesting to tell all of you about all of the people it takes to put on these meetings. I was just talking to the clerk the other day about it because it takes more people than it usually does. And so interpreters, we've got the interpreters and we need more than we usually do need. So we've got 20-minute shifts for interpreters. We also have the parliamentary verification officer, which you usually see in the room, who switches on and off. But then we also have control room for the webcasting, which used to be back there as well. But now in addition to that, we have Zoom technicians. We have technicians who monitor everyone's connectivity. That's different from the Zoom technicians. And then we have IT ambassadors that give you the call on the phone if there's any kind of technical difficulty and you need help. And then, of course, we have our analysts and we have our fantastic clerk. And so I just wanted to give them a little shout out while we were figuring out this problem that, it takes a lot of people to put on these meetings, and we really appreciate all the hard work that goes on behind the scenes, even though we don't get to see you. We know that our meetings run smoothly because of your efforts. So thank you so much for that. Hopefully the problem is resolved, and I'll hand it back to Mr. Luzon.
Merci, Madame la Présidente.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Every time we talk about the role of the provinces, this is very important for me because I know that our seniors were the first affected by the pandemic. It bears repeating that it's important to support the people who built our country. Who are they? Our parents, our friends, our family. They are aging and they want to stay in their homes as long as possible. We have taken measures for that, especially for seniors who live with their children. And if some of you are in this situation, I'd like to acknowledge your efforts. There are also seniors who live in private homes or long-term care facilities where they usually receive good care, but in some instances this is not the case. The system is broken, and it was heartbreaking to realize that. So a series of measures put forth in our full economic statement was targeting long-term care facilities. We've sent out equipments to the provinces and territories, but there is also all the support that we provided. We sent in the Army, the Canadian Armed Forces, and the Red Cross to provide assistance to our seniors, to support a system that was broken, and two provinces, namely Ontario and Quebec, the Canadian Armed Forces came to support the system, and I think as federal MPs we should be proud of that. we should be proud that we have a system that provided a last recourse, last resort, because I would never have thought that the Canadian Armed Forces would have to come to my riding to provide those types of services. But we had the Canadian Armed Forces twice in my riding ever since I was elected. The first time because of the floods, and now because of the pandemic. When we work with the Canadian Armed Forces, I can tell you that as an MP, I am very proud of our Canadian Armed Forces that are providing support, that are providing help. They are here not because I'm proud of the situation, but I'm proud of the fact that they are able to respond and to meet people's needs at the grassroots level. So that's a good example of the federal government helping provinces and territories. We also announced $150 million for improving ventilation and HVAC systems in schools. And
Ms. Vecchio, are you having the same problem?
No, actually, I'm not having a problem, but I just wanted to look at it. I recognize, and as you indicated, we have so many great people working in, not only in the room, interpretation, clerks, and the whole shabazzle. But we do know that if we continue to go past 2:30 today, that there will have to be a cancellation of other meetings because of protocol. And I just want to bring it about because I do believe if you look at the room that you may be able to find consensus to suspend the meeting, just so that we're not now interfering in the rest of the afternoon in important committees. Thank you.
Okay. One thing I did forget.
Point of, I guess it would be point of clarification, if I may, Madam Chair. Are we talking about suspending or adjourning?
I believe Ms. Vecchio asked for seek consensus to suspend. So
I can go for an adjournment. That's okay. It's just I just don't know the legal matters of it all. But I just look at the fact that we do know that there's some really important things going on after this as well. So thank you.
I did want to say, it looks like we do have consensus on that. If I was to just look at people's heads and wave at me if you're not in favor of it. But I did also want to say that I forgot to mention the cleaners that also make it possible for the committee meetings to move on, which Ms. Vecchio is saying that 2:30 is generally the time they need before the 3:30 meetings can continue. So we will adjourn for today, and we'll see you back at our next time.
Thank you.
Bye.